fast, die young.
Hello. Well, this is only the second sort of watch party that I've done on a movie, but it's going to be less of a watch party and more of a deep discussion on the film A Bridge Too Far. Now, myself and my guest co-hosts won't be going on camera tonight because we're going to be sharing lots of images and talking about stuff, and I've also got to constantly look at another screen to watch the film, which will be running at the same time. So we're all going to stay off camera tonight, but you all know how beautiful we look. Well, at least me and RrrrMmmmm anyway. So without further ado, from PositiveFandom, I've been on her channel many times. Very grateful for the invite every time. And she's back on the Outcast Creative channel. I have RrrrMmmmm in the studio.
Well, hello, Lance. How are you today?
Yeah, not too bad. A little bit tired because I had some work come in this week, a couple of little jobs, and then sort of you have to drop everything. And of course, they always come in quite late. So I'm sorry I wasn't able to join you for the Greyhound stream, but hopefully the next one. How did that go?
It went very well. You were missed. Greyhound is a fantastic film, and so was Operation Mincemeat, the other one that we did before that, which I would have loved to have had you on. But certainly, we have many more historical films to come for you to be there, and we always enjoy having you. And thank you for having me here today.
Yeah, I plan on doing quite. I mean, history's my thing, especially World War II. So we may be throwing them back and forth at each other at this rate. I'm going to do The Longest Day after this, which if you haven't seen,
I have seen that, but I definitely want to be there for that one.
Yeah, I mean, you probably watched it, you know, like ages ago on telly or something.
Well, my mother has Turner Classics, so I see a lot of these films over and over again.
Right.
However, they do kind of blend together, Lance.
Yeah, they do a bit. I think that one sticks out in people's minds because it was the last big film of that kind of budget that was shot in black and white.
Exactly. And fortunately, Turner Classics does show a lot of films, but they don't show every single film. So I do have to go outside a lot and look for other sources for where I can find historical films. So they're not really the only ones that show historical films, but they do cover a lot. And I think Criterion, which is another channel that I have, I do watch, historical films on their channel. But a lot of times I find myself on Amazon or, some, Prime to order the film because there isn't sort of like one concrete place you can go for every film. So
No. Well, you can, my DVD collection, but yeah, absolutely. Well, I've got another guest who's had some technical issues earlier, but let's see if we can get his audio working. It's the mysterious inside man, my friend who's been working in the film industry for many decades and still is. Are you there, sir? Well, we've got his Judge Dredd emblem, which by the way, we're doing a Judge Dredd stream. I think it's either next Tuesday or Wednesday. We're doing a comparison between the Stallone film and the Carl Urban film. And Inside Man has a prop from the Carl Urban film, a real prop from the set. And we're going to give it away to somebody in chat on the stream live.
Wow.
Yeah, so people, you might want to join that stream. Jacob Ironside, any movie with Sean Connery in it doubles. Yeah, Sean Connery rewrote most of his lines in this film, and we'll be talking about that. I've actually got the script here with me as well, the original shooting script. So I think Inside Man's got some technical issues. I'm going to take him out for a second, but if you want to log out and log back in again and see, because his audio was playing up a bit earlier.
Now, excuse me for one moment, Lance, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. I want to mention to you that you did ask me about a count up clock, and I did want to mention that I use one from YouTube. I go in and I search count up clock and I pick one. They have a number of different ones, and you can add it to the stream. and just
Yeah, I was wondering how I could do that as well as kind of share images and stuff at the same time. Will it stay there the whole time?
it should stay there. When you share images, it minimizes depending upon the settings that you have. I don't know what settings you have, but
Could you send me the link for that in the private
I
chat?
would be delighted to do
That
that.
would be most awesome, RM. Thank you very much. So
Mhm.
there's 5 people watching at the moment. Thank you very much for popping in. Some of them may be people who've been following my efforts to try and make my own World War II movie. First of all, there was Pegasus Bridge, then there was Paratrooper, which was a feature-length pilot for a Band of Brothers, European-style Band of Brothers show. We did shoot a fair chunk of footage for that movie, but we do not have a completed film because we couldn't get the remaining funds to shoot the rest of the pilot. But we did an awful lot of work for it. I've written 7 of the 12 episodes of the script for Paratrooper. 2 of them are already out on Amazon to buy, episodes 7 and 8, which actually covers episode 8 covers Arnhem. All told, the battle is all seen through the eyes of a young boy. And I deliberately wanted to write a script about the Battle of Arnhem that didn't show any of the scenes from Bridge Too Far, that covered all the stuff that Bridge Too Far missed. So by seeing it through the eyes of this boy who is actually lost, I got to move him around in the battle where I wanted as he tries to get back home. So that is already available. I'm just going to share that so people can have a quick look in case they don't know about it. And if you're watching the stream, if you're able to hit the like button, but even better, if you could do a little post about it on your social media and show people or pop it up on your timeline, that'd be lovely. So these are the first 2 episodes of Paratrooper. And that bridge on the back cover is actually the same bridge that they used for A Bridge Too Far, which is not the real Arnhem Bridge. It's in the next town along, in the town of Daventer. And we'll be talking about why they used that bridge instead of Arnhem, because, well, Arnhem was decimated. So the Arnhem Bridge that's there now is all surrounded by very modern buildings.
That's pretty cool, Lance.
Yeah, so that's 2 episodes of my European Band of Brothers. The episode 7 is actually told from a German perspective, which you never see really in a TV show like that, called The Other Side. And it's told from a young German paratrooper's point of view, who is actually also forced to take part in atrocities, reprisals against the Greek civilians, and they massacre all the men in a village, not actually having any proof whether they fought against them or not, because the Germans took really high casualties on the invasion of Crete. So that episode was really interesting to write. And again, it's all based on fact. It's a fictional character, the lead guy, but it's all the stuff that he sees and that happens to him all really happened. Just see if we're Inside Man. Have you fixed your audio yet?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes. You're a little bit quiet, but we can hear you.
Aha, right, okay.
Just speak close to your mic.
Okay, 1 sec.
But we can hear you, and we can hear you, and
okay?
Yeah, that's fine. And you fixed your avatar.
Yeah.
So I was just as a bit of a preamble, I was just telling people about the 2 World War II projects I've been trying to make in forever.
Yes, yeah.
And that's the European Band of Brothers. I can't remember, Inside Man. Have you read any of the scripts for this?
No, not yet. Not yet. But you know, I will. I'm going to have to put them on order.
I'll send you some to read as well. But obviously, if you can support me by buying the book,
I'd rather. Yeah, I think it would. I think the best thing to do is to be, you know, to actually buy them, support you, and you know,
I want to give those.
That.
Thank you for that. I want to give those lads on the back a shout out. Now, we had, I think, young guys from about 2 or 3 reenactment groups, because the Dutch are really, really, I don't want to use the word fanatic, but they're really committed to telling the history of the Battle of Market Garden, Arnhem in particular, where so many British soldiers were killed. And the living history groups that turned up to help us for nothing more than a hot dog and a beer and a T-shirt were really dedicated with all the right kit. They marched in and out of where we were filming. We didn't actually expect to get more than like 5 or 6 people. So once we saw how many there were, we had to completely change the shots we were doing. And also there was a massive boat where that shot with the bridge was. There was a massive boat just to the right of that German. So when we'd recce'd the day before and worked out where all the cameras were going to go, we had to change it all when we got there on the day to cut the boat out. So we had to go much nearer to the bridge, even though we were told the boats weren't going to be there. But you know,
But it's
still
nice to have that to have people that kind of commitment. I think particularly because it's an important story for them. It's an important historical story, personal story
absolutely.
for them. You know, I should imagine that a lot of the people that were within those areas at that particular time, their their families, their ancestry really pretty much remains in those areas. I should imagine that's speculative, but I would suggest that a lot of their families are actually from that area.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest cost of the Battle of Arnhem was the Dutch civilian population.
Yeah,
there were hundreds of them killed in the battle, and of course, Bridge Too Far does have a focus on the civilian cost, which is really good. It actually bookends the film, which we'll get into when we start the movie. And I always wanted to do something on the Battle of Arnhem, but I was thinking, what can I do that's not in A Bridge Too Far? But when you've read every book on it and read the soldiers' citations and the battle accounts from the various parachute units, there's loads of stuff that doesn't feature in Bridge Too Far because it's such a broad painting of the whole operation. So I included as much of the stuff that's missing as I could in my 65-minute episode. I'm really proud of that episode. It's one of the best scripts I've ever written.
I can't wait! I can't wait to read it. I'm really looking forward to reading it.
Blowing my trumpet there a bit, but I am very.
Why
that's
not?
It's one of the 30 scripts I wrote in lockdown. So these 2 episodes, I did 7.
Is that all?
It's not all, actually. I also wrote a 400-page novel.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
I was writing 22 pages a day. I mean, lockdown was creatively was great for me.
Yeah.
I was completely on fire. Anyway, those 2 episodes of Paratrooper are available now on Amazon. You'll be able to get the first 2 episodes, 1 and 2. They're going to be dropping as soon as I get the cover sorted because it's ready to go, but I haven't got the cover quite right. And I'm not a designer. So if there's someone watching who is a designer, please get in touch with me and you could give me a hand. So there's 10 people watching right now. Thank you very much for tuning in and giving us your time.
Wow.
You can treat this as a background radio show if you like. But please do put stuff in the comments, like and subscribe, and do check out our other videos. You'll be particularly interested in the industry interviews. And I have interviewed the 2nd unit director of Bridge Too Far, but we're going to have to re-interview him because YouTube blocked that video.
Oh.
I showed too many clips of the movie, even with the sound out.
Oh God.
Yeah, so they took it off. But I'll tell you when we're doing the stream. I'll say some of the things that Peter said. Before we start, I think it's good for our audience to know that our female guest, RM, only watched this movie for the very first time a few days ago.
Oh.
So, RM, what was your sort of initial response? Because it's a big, meaty film. It's a big story. When you sort of sat back and you'd finished watching it, what was your initial reaction? How were you feeling?
Well, of course, I didn't know anything about this story because there's hundreds of stories from this era that I just don't know about. And so I was intrigued by it in the sense of any kind of military action and plan. I just love hearing about it, but I knew nothing of it. So it was completely new to me. And I did enjoy the fact that they took the time to tell the story. And I didn't care how long this film was. I was fine that it's 3 hours. If it was 4 hours, I would have been fine with it. What I found interesting was the casting choices, because I think that the casting, it was quite typical of what I would expect, with the exception of Ryan O'Neal, as I had mentioned to you before, Lance. I was very surprised that he was given a role in this way because I'm not accustomed to seeing him play a character like that. Actually more accustomed to him playing things like that I know him in, for example, in A Love Story, or what's another one? I think he might have been.
Yeah, at the time he was
Also
a romantic lead, and it was thought by casting him that would get some women into the cinemas to watch it.
Really? And
yeah, because I mean, it's a war movie, so they did the same thing with Harry Styles on Dunkirk.
Dunkirk, yeah.
And
Harry Styles got a massive following, and I guarantee you that's where 50% of the under 18 female ticket sales came from, his fan base.
Well, I also knew he was in Barry Lyndon. I've seen him in a lot of films, but just nothing like this. And it was actually nice to see him play more of an authority figure for a change. Not that he hasn't, I don't know his entire repertoire, but it was nice to see him in that. And of course, many of the American actors and British actors I recognize right away, because as you know, I do watch Turner Classics a lot. And so therefore I've seen these actors a million times, but seeing this story and certainly learning about it and honestly the death toll of what's happened, and I can kind of appreciate it a little bit more because this was one of those films made about World War II at a time when people were still around who had experienced it.
Yeah.
So, one of my greatest concerns that I have is the notion of, for some people, they didn't want to talk about the war after it ended. And so, there was a lot that was sort of kept to themselves. And it was almost, very hush hush, don't say very much about your experience. And so, any film that was made, let's say, from 1950 to about maybe even 2000, in those 50 years, anybody who had the guts and the balls to come forward and share their experience, and then it gets made into a book or a story or a play or whatever, we're very lucky because it's a firsthand account. And so, what I really do find interesting now is that, and I've kind of Lance and I were talking about this the other day, is the notion of what happens when many of these first accounters and even people from the second account are no longer with us. I mean, I think for the three of us, we are fortunate to have parents and grandparents who are alive during this time. Can kind of explain and share experiences about World War II, but it's incredibly difficult to open up a book and pretend that you're going to understand every element of what's going on in an action. And I do have to give a lot of credit to many of the people probably watching this, and perhaps Inside Man and you, Lance, as well, can do this, but I cannot open up a book and completely, picture the events in that manner. And so I rely on video or even plays to go ahead and present a realistic interpretation of what has happened. And I think that this particular film, especially is quite easy for me to follow, which is very rare. But what it does is that I can actually see certain points where even the military personnel are questioning what they're doing at certain parts. Like where there's one scene where one of the guys says, well, all the other times we were supposed to go on a mission, it's always been, they've always said it's a no-go, but now you guys are saying it's okay. And your ears perk up when you hear something like that, because that there's something different. And the other thing that stands out to me about this film is that this isn't what I would typically watch, which would be, a bunch of guys going across enemy lines, and it's just a few of them, a handful is a secret.
Yeah, 5 guys on a mission kind of movie. This is a real historical document.
I just think it's really interesting that this was 35,000 men we're talking about. And it's not the kind of thing that you can sort of just hide. They land somewhere, you're going to notice that. And so, you have to look at it from the perspective of, well, what happens when you do have a large operation like that? How different would it be from many of the films that they show, where it is, I'm not going to say it's sensationalized, but it's given superhero status. These guys are undercover and they have to do this incredible odds thing, and most of them don't make it back. That's like Where Eagles Dare or The Dirty Dozen movie, that kind of film. And so I think that this is very important for us to continue to see things like this, especially because many of the people who were alive at this time are leaving us. And it's important for us to see these sort of movies being made in that era, even though this is 1970?
The movie was made it was shot in 76 and released in 77.
Okay, well, that's excellent, because as I said, there's still the firsthand accounts of what happened.
Yeah.
We do need to have those contributions from that generation, because they are leaving us. And you know,
Yeah.
the other day I was watching a program where they were giving tribute to everybody who was on the USS Intrepid, and this young man who got up there, when they showed you his picture, he was 17 when he started and became served on the Intrepid, and now he's 97. And I just thought to myself, we really need to kind of bolster these films and make people
Yeah.
aware that they exist, but also to kind of look at the elements of even the way, the style in which they make films, and the differences of what we would do now versus
Yeah.
then. So those were some of the things that I thought about and continually think about as the generation goes. And, you know, and as we all are interested in it, the three of us have an intense interest in historical films, and we value them. And I think it does certainly tell us a story that is valuable, but also needs to be continually told, as new generations are thinking to themselves, well, I didn't know that happened, or I didn't even understand that. There's going to be a lot that they don't know, but they need us to remind them the way that we were reminded by our parents and grandparents. So, you know, I think it's really interesting to do something like this with the both of you today.
I think
sorry, Gary.
I was just going to quickly say that I think one of the things that you did say was about this being you know, an interpretation. I think that's an incredibly important assessment of it, because although, you know, there are certain elements of this that are very accurate, we do have to remember that this is a cinematic interpretation. You know,
Yeah.
to try and cram in an enormous piece of history into a 3-hour period. You know, it's not that certain things have to be sacrificed or anything like that, but things have to be condensed, and but it is important to realize that these are cinematic interpretations, and
Yeah.
but they do contain the absolute essence of the reality of the truth of these stories.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
you're right, they're so important.
there's 3 characters in the film that are amalgamations of more than one real
Yeah,
person, including the
yeah.
character that Elliot Gould plays.
Mm.
The character that I forget the name of the actor, but the guy who carries the umbrella.
Oh yeah,
He's an amalgamation of 3 different people.
yeah.
One of whom got a VC called Jack Grayburn. But to pick up on a couple of things that RM said before we start the movie, and if you want to watch it at the same time as us, there is actually a full version of Bridge Too Far on YouTube, pretty decent quality. Just do a search and you'll see it come up. It's the one with 3.3 million views, and rightly so. Yeah, you were saying about the real people. Now, when they were filming this, the guy who played, there were several real people that were there on the set. So Michael Caine's character was there on the set for his scenes. Anthony Hopkins, Colonel Frost, the real Colonel Frost, was there when they were filming some of his scenes. The real Major Urquhart was there and visited Sean Connery on set. So there were quite a few of the lead actors.
Jim Gavin was also there. Actually,
he was. General Gavin was actually
Jim
one of
Gavin
the main technical advisors. I think
Yes,
he was there for the whole shoot.
Yeah.
He doesn't like being photographed outside of his uniform.
I think that just to kind of pin on to what you were saying, I think one of the Gavin is somebody that I think a lot of people should hold an enormous amount of respect for, and research him, because this is a man that was absolutely instrumental in fighting for the rights of a non-segregated army in the United States services.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's very interesting.
He was a real advocate of the amalgamating both the black and the white armies, and not having them as separate forces, in essence. An incredibly intelligent, astute, brave man, and very forward thinking.
Yeah, I'm going to get a picture of the real guy up actually while we're talking about him. But they're contrary to any movies you may have seen. Unlike the British, there were no black American paratroopers actively in combat missions in World War II.
Yeah.
And I have heavily researched that topic. There was a black unit of
The triple
paratroopers in
nickels, wasn't it?
training.
Yeah, the triple nickels, I think.
Yeah, but they weren't
555th.
deployed. They weren't deployed. And
No, they weren't. They were. I think that they were deployed as fire searchers or something.
And I mean, part of the reason that they didn't, apart from the integration issue and the racism issue with America, of course, is that any black paratrooper that would have been caught behind enemy lines by the Germans would have been executed immediately, probably.
I mean, look at what happened to the three members of the 333rd artillery unit in the Bulge. I mean, which one of the worst atrocities, I think.
Yeah, that was an all-black American unit, wasn't it?
Yeah, terrible.
Yeah, murdered by the SS. So there's the real General James Cameron. That's not a bad likeness for Ryan O'Neal, is it? Really?
No, it's not bad. No, not bad at all.
I think it's one of Ryan O'Neal's best performances as well. Very understated, really well played.
Yeah.
It was nice to see him in something different.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, let's start the film. How do I get the timer up on the screen and am I still able to share other things? Is that doable?
Yes. Are you in StreamYard?
I am.
Okay. So while you're in StreamYard, you're gonna do you have the YouTube? You have to open that separate.
I've got the link open on a separate page.
Wonderful. You're gonna click on. You're gonna go down to the bottom. Please go down to the bottom of your StreamYard page.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna see where it says mute, start cam settings, and present. You're gonna click on present.
Yeah. Yeah. That's to share screen normally.
And you're gonna press share screen.
Yeah.
And when you press share screen, you're going to have some choices. One of the YouTube open link should be one of the choices that you can share.
Yeah, that's correct.
And then press that so you can share it, and it should pop in with we have 3 windows here. There'll be a 4th one with the numbers, or sometimes it can appear big, sometimes it can appear small.
How can I? But then if I want to share something else, because I'm going to share images as we go. How can I keep this running in the box along with the other stuff? I don't think I can share 2 things at the same time.
Well, you can, and you'd have to create a custom layout in StreamYard in order to do that.
Oh God. Okay, well I'll tell you what. I'll have the clock running off screen, and if people want to check what the time is, I can tell them. Occasionally, I might pop it up. All right, so. There is a link for A Bridge Too Far on YouTube. In fact, I'm going to pop that link on the chat so people don't have to run around and get their Blu-rays or DVDs. And you can open it up next to us. I'm sure most people watching this will have seen it before. So this is going to be quite an in-depth commentary, and there's loads to say. Okay,
there certainly is.
Yeah, I mean, it is my favorite World War II movie of all time. It's not a flawless film. It's got one big weak point, which I personally would have cut out of the film and replaced with something else, which I'll talk about as we go. I'm sure Inside Man can guess which bit I'm talking about.
Something to do with a particular vehicle on a bridge?
No, it's to do with Jimmy Kahn.
Oh, right, yeah.
That whole subplot could have been half the time.
Yeah.
Or it could have just not even been in the film. But we'll get to that. It's a good performance from Kahn.
Yeah.
But very understated again. I think everybody was really kind of going very method in this film. No one wanted to showboat because they would have stuck out. And Attenborough was good at, as a director, was good at keeping his actors in line. Right. Okay. So I put the link in the chat. We are going to start the film. I'll start my counter. I probably won't pause the film, but if I have to, I shall say. Now, the movie, after the United Artists logo, the movie opens with actual footage from World War II, mainly covering D-Day and the invasion of Europe. So the interesting thing is that this film, I didn't see it until it was first shown on British TV. It was on ITV. I think it was screened in 81 or 82. Inside Man on. It was weird. It was on like a Wednesday evening or something.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
I saw a couple of trailers for it, and I was like, "Right, Mum and Dad, got to stay up now. I need to, I need to watch that. I'm going to record it with my tape recorder because that's what I used to do before I had a video recorder. I used to audio
do that.
record. I used to audio record films.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
D90s and
yeah.
and D120s. But they'd always snap, so I'd have a backup tape. I had Longest Day on 3 different audio tapes.
Oh my God, I can't believe that you used to do that.
You know what? It's not just you and me. So it's actress Liv Ullmann, who there's just been a really good documentary about, which I think is might be on Netflix or Amazon. That's worth checking out, about her whole career. She plays an incredible character, which we'll get onto later.
Does.
And this footage is all, the fall of Paris and everything else. Now, the war films I'd seen up until this point was Kelly's Heroes, Dirty Dozen, Where Eagles Dare. So that's all guys on a mission. But I had seen The Longest Day. I'd seen it twice by this time, and I'd seen Battle of the Bulge. So my knowledge, and I had a book on D-Day. That was all I had. My knowledge of once the Allies invaded Europe it was all victory all the way until we defeated the Germans. I didn't know we had a couple of catastrophic defeats. Hertingen Forest would be another one, but Market Garden was the biggest failure probably of the Allied offensive, I suppose, to retake Europe. And the funny thing is nobody talked about it. There was hardly any books on the subject back then. There was Robert Urquhart's one called Arnhem, which I soon then went and got out the library, which was very dry. Should have got a good editor and someone to co-write that with him, but but back in the day, that's how those books were done. So when somebody said to me, this guy who knew his history, he went, "Oh yeah, that was a really big fuck up. That was we got our asses kicked." And I went, "No, we didn't. We didn't get defeated after D-Day," because I just assumed that everything I'd seen in the Hollywood movies was correct.
Yeah.
So when I watched Bridge Too Far, I was in for a bit of a shock. And it was the first war film that really gave me the reality of the war. And that was William Goldman's exact objective. He wanted it to be an anti-war film. Yeah. And it came out at the height of the Vietnam War, which is why the box office in America wasn't very good. But the film still broke even. It broke even before it even was released. So the music, which is absolutely amazing, and I've got the vinyl soundtrack right behind me, which is worth a fortune, was actually composed by John Addison. And John Addison was a tank driver in 30 Corps. He was actually in the battle.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Oh. No, I didn't know that.
No. He didn't do like loads of soundtracks, but he did a small number.
I loved the soundtrack. I don't know, was it original scores? It was a very kind of catchy. It felt almost like, I'm gonna say somewhat romantic, but also basic training sounding song to me. And I think it was very catchy. I could see, someone singing lyrics to that. So, and I wonder, whatever happened with that theme for this movie?
No, it was all an original score. And I must correct myself, because Addison did do a huge amount of scores. I'm just thinking of his more recent ones, but he also did Swashbuckler, which I've also got the Blu-ray of, with the guy from Jaws in it. But he did a couple of other war movies: The Cockleshell Heroes, Reach for the Sky, I Was Monty's Double. So a lot of Ealing, home British productions. But he did about, this looks like about 40 or 50 scores on his Wikipedia, and music for television. So he actually, I let my research down a bit there. I should have double checked his page, because I think I just had it in my head that I didn't see his name on many things. But his career, his last score was in 85. And I started collecting soundtracks in around 81. So I guess I kind of missed the peak of his career. But he was quite old when he did Bridge Too Far. He passed away in 1998. The other thing I mentioned earlier is that the film is, and I think this is really important, and it was very wise to do this, it's bookended with scenes with the Dutch civilians.
Yeah.
and they're the people who are impacted by this rather gung-ho operation. An operation which, by the way, with a few small adjustments, could have been successful. Costly, but it could have been successful.
Certainly, Lance, like many circumstances like this, we see where it's not just one event that goes wrong, but many things that go wrong that create a situation like this.
Oh, sorry, the music just blared out on my other speaker. Yeah, I mean, the principal reason, in my view, for the failure, the overriding thing that made the operation fail, was the failure of the Americans to capture Nijmegen Bridge on the first day. And why they didn't land troops both sides of the bridge is a complete mystery to me. And just generally also overall, for the whole operation in Arnhem and Nijmegen, the troops were landed too far away from the bridges. You always land as close as you can.
Yeah, 10 miles just seems ridiculous.
Yeah, and the reason that they didn't land on the south side was because they assumed the ground was too soft for glider landings, which wasn't true. It would have brought them to a halt rather than flip them over. And it would have been better of them to risk heavier casualties on the first day with the drop than sustain all the casualties that they got because of where they dropped and all the problems that caused later. Terence Marsh, production designer, I actually met in Judi Dench's dressing room, of all places, after I went to see her in a play and got invited backstage. And I recognized him straight away from the making of documentary and said, "You designed Bridge Too Far, didn't you?" And he was, yeah. And I said, "Do you know that the scenes from Bridge Too Far were used in Tea with Mussolini with Judy? Because all the battle scenes in Tea with Mussolini are all taken from Bridge Too Far."
Oh, are they really?
Yeah.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, which is kind of nuts when you think about it.
And who said that the film industry isn't a green industry, recycling their scenes?
Well, indeed. So we open September 44 with this lovely kind of, we're up in an attic, aren't we, with a family who's part of the Dutch.
Excuse me, Lance, were you able to do the counter? Because I'm not quite sure where we are.
I can't put it up at the moment because I want to share some stuff, but it's on 8 minutes 2.
Okay.
Right now. But that's weird because I started at the same time as the film, and the film running time currently on YouTube is at 6 minutes 22.
Oh.
But you know, when YouTube plays films, they play them at different speeds.
Yeah.
Because I've synced up films on 2 monitors before with the same YouTube link. And after about 3 minutes, they will always go out of sync because they all play at slightly different speeds because of the connection. Strange, isn't it? But yeah, so we're on the counter, we're 8 minutes in, but I think I'll probably just use the time on the video with 6 minutes 55, and it's when the father says panic. That's the sound we can hear. You cut to this wonderful shot of all these German extras and their sweethearts. There's loads of detail in this shot with everybody going up on the canal, and you can see that they've commandeered civilian vehicles. There's a fire truck in there. It's great the way they've mixed the women in with the men, because when the army was retreating, if they'd got girlfriends in Holland, the girls would have been probably killed or certainly publicly shamed, which is covered in Band of Brothers, for dating a German soldier. So they would flee with them. So yeah, you always had like German officers with their mistresses in their cars, you know. So this next scene, German Western Front Army HQ, is actually literally about 3 minutes walk from the bridge in Deventer that they use for Arnhem Bridge. It's I think it's the town hall in Deventer, and it's a very, very short walk. I mean, it's literally round the corner from a couple of other big scenes in the movie. It's amazing how several of the locations, Deventer was really used to the max. It wasn't just the bridge that they shot all around the town as well. And so many of the big locations in the movie are really close together, but they make them look very different, which is great. That's the trickery of filmmaking, of course. Now, this is Wolfgang Priest, who's playing Rundstedt. Great little performance. It's only the one scene. and of course he played German officers in God knows how many war movies. He was the bad guy German in Hannibal Brooks with Oliver Reed, if you remember that.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
But I think he now he either fled Germany or he was in the German army. One of the German actors was in the German army.
Yeah, Hardy Kruger. Hardy Kruger was in the German army.
It wasn't he a young SS?
Yes, he was. Yeah, he
yeah.
was young SS. Yeah.
I mean, he was obviously, you know, what do you call it, press ganged or whatever.
Yeah.
But
I think
I
so
mean,
many
he
of
didn't
them
have a
were.
choice. Yeah. But Wolfgang Priest, I think his family went on the run when the Nazis took over, if I remember rightly. Let me just check. I've got his IMDb here. Great scene, this.
Yeah.
With I really like the dialogue. But I'll tell you something interesting is every version of this that has got subtitles on, there's been like 3 different video releases, 4 different DVD releases. The subtitles always vary.
Oh, did they?
No, the wording is never exactly the same on all the different releases.
How odd.
It is odd. Yeah.
It happens quite a lot in Asian films as well. You can have a different version, and at the bottom, the translation, it can be completely different to English.
Yeah.
There's a shot here which I always found really interesting when they cut back to the Germans relaxing and the woman comes out of the cafe with a frown on her face and then smiles. You momentarily hold on these 2 Germans who kind of stand by the table, and then it pans up to the loft of the Dutch family's house. I thought those 2 Germans were actually going to be characters in the film. I thought that was like their introduction scene.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking that as a kid when I watched it the first time. Oh, who are these 2 guys? And that's the only time you see them. It's just a very clever way of showing the change of mood. With the soldiers, that they're now a bit more relaxed and the army's not so dejected. Very simple, but
I certainly thought they were going to sit down and have a coffee or something.
Yeah. Yeah, this kid actor, Van Woot, I think his surname is. I found him on Facebook and I've reached out to him. He is still acting and he's directing. Now, this building for General Browning's HQ, when we cut back to England for the first time with the main scene with the English actors where they do the briefing, that building is actually in Holland. And that's a big Dutch manor house, not far from Deventer, a little bit further out into the countryside, very near Sean Connery's golf course, which coincidentally he was housed near the golf course. Must have been a total coincidence, of course. So this is the first scene with Dirk Bogarde. Absolutely wonderful actor, very tortured soul in real life.
Yeah.
Had to kind of, he was gay and had to stay in the closet. And of course he did these Doctor in Love movies. He was a big romantic icon.
And I've seen quite a few of those on Turner Classics.
Great films, a little bit dated now, but kind of cute in their own way.
They were quite daring, I think.
Yeah. I mean, they're very of their time. So this scene is where we sum up the whole operation. And it's really clever the way that they don't show Gene Hackman in this scene until right at the end. Like he's deliberately been left out of the briefing.
When he starts talking about the Germans.
Yeah. What about
the Germans? Yeah.
But I mean, Browning forgets to say where he is. Now, Browning and Sosabowski, the character that Hackman played, actually became really good friends after the war. And I've got Sosabowski's photographed autobiography, including all these pictures that he and his unit took in Arnhem after the war, as well as when they were there. Pictures you won't get in any other book. The whole biography is in Polish, so I've never been able to read it. But it's signed by his grandson, who sent it to me.
Oh, how wonderful!
Yeah, it's a really lovely book. I mean, it's full of pictures, so the fact that I can't read it doesn't detract from how great it is.
I think, you know, again, you know, you can't sort of understate the importance of the Polish forces, particularly, you know, those that were stationed in England, you know, with the RAF and the paratroopers and everything. You know, what they had gone through. and come over here to fight alongside us. But I think one of the most shameful events, certainly after the Second World War, was that they were actually denied the opportunity to march in the victory parade on VE Day.
That's right.
It was just disgusting.
And so were the black units as well, if I remember rightly.
Absolutely disgusting.
Yeah. And I mean, when you think that the whole reason the war started in the first place was because of the invasion of Poland.
Yeah.
I always found it ironic that we then just gave it to the Russians, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, because by then everybody was so sick of the war, they just wanted it to end. But it was like, well, we didn't even achieve the reason it started in the first place. It was so. There's a lot of controversy over Gene Hackman's acting portrayal in this film. A lot of people consider it quite weak. His accent is off. I'm okay with it. I do think it's probably. His accent probably undermines his performance. I think his performance is fine.
I think I can kind of forgive Gene Hackman anything, to be honest with you, because I just love Gene Hackman.
He is my favourite actor of all time.
Yeah.
And I've written to him and told him that.
Yeah. Great actor.
So this is when we cut back to the Germans, and Wolfgang Priest has got a second scene, which is this scene. It's really a continuation of the last scene. And this is when we get the first hint that, oh dear, something's going to go wrong, because we're going to get one of our most elite units to rest and re-equip right in the town where the British are going to be dropping. And he puts that marker on the table and says, Arnhem, yeah. So that's the first kind of notch in the coffin, as it were.
I think what's interesting about this is that we do, you know, Richard Attenborough and William Goldman do actually lay out stage by stage the kind of tiny little mistakes that are gradually building.
Yeah,
the tiny things that are starting to sort of become part of that long line of dominoes that are about to fall.
And certainly a breakdown of communication is one of them for sure.
Yeah, we're certainly gonna get into that. Just going to my Market Garden folder here briefly. Let me need to come back out of that slightly. So I've actually got the screenplay here. The original screenplay, and a lot of the lines in the screenplay are different. Not massively different, but there's a lot of things that are subtly different about it. When I got the Blu-ray for the first time of Bridge Too Far, I was so impressed with the quality of it that instead of trying to get normal screenshots like a sane person, I went and took loads of screenshots of it with my phone. So of course the quality of them looks absolutely dreadful. But one of the things I was doing when I photographed them was I was trying to get the key shots in the film which demonstrated Attenborough's attention to detail and how the art department and the production design would put depth in all the shots. You know, and you see that in the film a lot. Let me just close this.
I do love how they I guess in this upcoming scene when this young kid is as he's riding
the bike
and he sees the tanks, and then of course a plane is going overhead and taking photographs. And then later on in the film you can actually see him
in the pictures.
That was really a nice touch.
Nice touch. Lovely touch.
Yeah. And I think they actually took those photos for real when they did the Passover. They had a old-fashioned camera or something in the actual plane. And that scene with that road, when the kid is riding along the road, that is shot on a military artillery range northeast of Deventer, east of Arnhem slightly. And that's the same area where they also shot the bit where 30 Corps start rolling up the road. It's the same place. The scenes with all the planes and gliders and stuff in the background, they had, I think they had about 10 or 12 working Dakotas, which they got, by the way, from all over the world and brought them together to do the big drops and everything. they were all stationed at the airfield, at Deline Airfield, which is a museum now. It's like a little private museum, but you can you can contact them and arrange for a visit. You don't need to be a special personality or anything. And it's run by a very dedicated team. But that airfield was turned into the airfield for all the aerial unit photography. So all the Dakotas actually took off from Deline Airfield, which is just north of Arnhem. And then they did the actual main drop with the British, with 3,000 extras it was in total. Some of them were already on the ground, of course, to make the numbers look even bigger. But that drop took place on Ginkle Heath, which is the heath where the drop actually did take place. So they filmed that in the real location.
What's quite interesting about the shots from the I know, sort of getting slightly ahead, but the shots from the cockpits where they're looking out at the planes ahead of them, the 47s and the gliders and everything. They were actually photographs that were just stuck onto a piece of glass.
Yeah, that's right. They were painted. I think they were sort of cut out and painted separately, and then
is that considered a practical effect then?
Yeah, it was actually it was actually sort of on. I think it was actually shot on set. You know, some of the stuff, some of those views were actually shot on set, and but yeah, amazing. I love those kind of practical effects.
Yeah, it's the same way they did the space shuttles in the Moonraker film, the Bond film, which came out a couple of years after that. They reshot the footage several times. Now this is I think he's called Lieutenant Grimes in the film. This is the guy who's worried about the operation. He's reading the intelligence reports, and he's hearing that there's armor in the Arnhem area, and no one wants to cancel the operation, because it's true that like 7 operations were cancelled before this one.
Right.
At least, I think it might have even been more than that, but at least that many. There was very much resistance to this time we're going, this time the party's on. I think you hear. Now this is the scene with Jeremy Kemp. I think he just passed away recently, where they discuss the drop zones and how far away they're going to be, and everybody's like, "What?" And I think this was a really big missed opportunity. Problem was, Urquhart wasn't massively experienced. The guy who was leading the British into Arnhem, not on operations of this level. So I think if it had been the Americans in Arnhem, they probably would have said no way. But Gary, is your audio playing up again?
No, I'm fine,
okay,
mate.
Good. No, I can hear you. That's fine. I'll keep a strange reverb somewhere.
Yeah, I'm hearing that actually.
So there's a few comments in the chat. Big Daddy, this is in my top 3. Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, Big Daddy MRI. We'll get into a lot of that. I've got to keep an eye on where the film is. So yeah, I mean, they talk about the drop zones, and Kemp says, well, we have found a place that's suits all your needs. It's flat and firm. Where the hell is it? Well, it's not on this map. It's over here. And it's like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, aren't paratroops supposed to drop near the objective as possible? And they learn those lessons from D-Day and how widely you can get scattered. And also, by now they knew how quickly the Germans could counterattack and pull themselves together. They were very good at doing that as an army. So I just, no one sort of objected, and it was very difficult if you were a lower rank to, in a meeting, especially in the British Army then, to sort of, sir, objection, this is stupid. You just wouldn't do that. You'd have to first have a one-to-one with your immediate senior, who would then have to take it up one-to-one with his immediate senior, and so on. And a lot of it was to do with the RAF as well. They wanted a particular route to go in where they had the least flak possible. But in the end, they ended up taking far more casualties than they would have done if they'd gone closer. Especially as the Germans were waiting for them on the second and third drops.
Yeah, I think if going by the Cornelius Ryan book, um, I kind of get the impression that he was maybe not overtly suggesting or overtly or explicitly saying that this was really an egotistical venture on Montgomery's part, but it does kind of allude to it, that there was this bizarre. So Montgomery saw it as bizarre competition between him and Eisenhower, and I think I think there's a great line that's in Saving Private Ryan, where they say that guy's overrated, and I
Yeah,
genuinely believe that. I do think Montgomery was overrated.
yeah, he was very good at playing to the press. But I
Yeah.
mean, here's the original script on the scene that we're on now in Browning's headquarters again.
Oh, right, okay.
But it's interesting that he's not featured in the film at all. He's a character completely off screen. And that's very true of the battle, because he wasn't present hardly at all. He implemented the operation, but he wasn't there, like on the battlefield. I mean, he was there, but you know, he wasn't cheering the troops on and doing all that kind of thing. And there was a strange lack of urgency.
Yeah.
In certain elements of the operation at different times.
Yeah.
So there was a number of opportunities lost to actually still save the thing from still becoming a massive catastrophe. So this is the scene where Gene Hackman, playing Sosabowski, kicks off, and you've got that dialogue here. Tell you the extent of my faith. And I remember I had trouble understanding Hackman's last line. In the case of a massacre, what difference would it make? But and then if you look at this next scene with British Logistics Colonel, this scene is cut. It's not in the film.
Oh.
Yeah, so they're talking about the number of anti-aircraft batteries.
Yeah.
That scene is not in the film. It was probably shot, but it was cut. So, and then this is the bit about when they're talking about the radios. We go into the next scene with the radios. So the running time on the film now is, it's jumped about a bit. I've got it on two different screens, and both of them are running at different times, even though I started them at the same time, and it's the same link. Hilarious. Well, I'm currently on 24 minutes in on one monitor and 20 minutes in on the other one. That's bizarre, isn't it? What scene have you got on RM right now?
They're looking at the scene that I was talking about, the photographs of the tanks with the boy who's in the photograph.
Oh, and he's setting up the projector.
Yes.
And the first picture's upside down.
That's right.
Yeah, I remember that. Let me yeah, let me get that. I'll just change that on the one I'm. Yeah, because then he says these are the only photographs that have shown tanks. And that, of course, is a.
And certainly he was bringing this up because this, I guess, maybe out of the thousands of photos they take in the course of a day, or how many ever there are, this was the only evidence that they had visually that, you know, that give them a visual confirmation that there are tanks there. But this is another one where there's a communication breakdown.
Yeah. And then again, you've got another scene with the logistics here, with the American and British logistics talking about supply and numbers of aircraft, all cut from the movie, not in the film.
Yeah, you kind of get the impression that was probably United Artists saying, you know, come on, something's got to give here, because
there is a longer cut. There is a longer cut of the film, and I've seen it. It was accidentally released on VHS video, had a whole load of scenes in it that are not in any other version. And my friend who had that copy, he lost it.
Oh.
And I'll never forget going round to his house. There's a scene where the Americans are trying to find Nijmegen Bridge and they get massacred. That's not in the main cut of the movie. And that cut does exist somewhere. I'm not making this up.
It certainly does exist somewhere. Somebody has it. Maybe Big Daddy MRI or somebody in the chat knows.
I think it was a rough cut that was accidentally released, because one of the other things I remember about it was that they actually used footage of the real 30 core for some of the 30 core cutaways. But all of the other 30 core footage that they shot for the movie was all still in there. I think it was like they were marking other places for other bits to go that ultimately didn't end up there. The scene with the main briefing with Edward Fox, which takes place in it actually took place in a cinema in Holland, in a town called Leopoldsville. That is actually the cinema in Deventer that was shot.
Oh,
right round the corner from where they.
Excuse me, Lance, and pardon me for interrupting.
No, that's right.
Rude manner. Big Daddy MRI in the chat says that he has it.
Oh, he's got that one. I'm just trying to. Yeah, I mean, Bella in the chat as well made a valid point that the reason that they changed the name of the guy to Major Fuller was his real name was Major Urquhart, the same as General Urquhart, but you didn't want two Urquharts in the movie. So they just made his character a kind of fictional character.
Yeah.
So Big Daddy MRI's got all the cuts of the film. So the scene I'm talking about, one of the Americans says, Nijmegen Bridge must be around here somewhere, and they're wandering through the city, and suddenly these doors burst open, and there's an MG42 in it. The platoon scatters, and everywhere they go, there are Germans machine gunning them. And the first line that the American says in that scene is acted really badly, and I think that's why they cut it. The scene itself is good, but the acting from the American who had that line was not good. So, yeah, but Edward Fox is great in this briefing scene. And
Edward Fox is. I think Edward Fox is just brilliant at playing Edward Fox. Just talking like that all the time.
Yeah.
Hello, Joe. Yes.
That's a really good impression of him. 64 miles behind enemy lines. That there is the prize. The bridge over the Rhine. Yeah, I mean it's a really great scene, and the stuff with the banter with him and Michael Caine, which is kind of our first introduction to Michael Caine. In the movie, also kind of playing Michael Caine. But I mean they're all great in this film, and if you look in this scene and you look who's sitting next to Michael Caine playing his number two,
young Winston, right?
It's the actor who plays the bad guy in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Oh, okay.
He's the German, the one who goes over the cliff on the tank.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So he is a British actor, but he lives not far from me. I've bumped into him a few times. I forget his name at the minute, but yeah, no, that did happen with the first platoon that went into Nijmegen to try and find the bridge. That's right. So it was always interesting that scene was cut. I think I'm going to keep the script up here for the minute until I.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Actually, keeping that up.
Because we can see what's been cut. There's one shot that was in the extended rough cut that I saw, where they're driving into Arnhem. Connery's in a Jeep. It's not long after they've landed and then it pans to the ground, and all these German boots go past the camera. So at that point the Germans are behind them. And that's not in the main release. So then we cut to Colonel Frost, of course, played by Anthony Hopkins. It's our introduction to him. Brilliant performance.
Oh, very fantastic.
Yeah, very close to the real guy. There's lots of interviews with the real Colonel Frost online. Wix is played by my friend Paul Copley. I begged Paul Copley to come and do an interview because he was also in Zulu Dawn.
And he was in Sharp, right?
He might have done a guest part in one episode. I'm not sure. He wasn't one of the main characters. I had Jason Salkey from Sharp come on the channel. That's one of the industry interviews that people can check out in that folder. But Paul thought about it and he said no in the end. Some actors just don't like doing that kind of thing. Yeah. And I really tried hard to get him to come on. But he has told me all the stories about what went on. with filming. Now here's another scene that was cut. American logistics again. See, so this is talking about, I don't know, other supply things. They jump with their rifles. It's not great. I mean, it's not stuff we really need, so I can see why they cut it. And then I don't see the scene with Jimmy Caan isn't in the order where it comes. I think so. This is the original shooting script, but I think the scene with Major Fuller getting told he's going to get left behind. Does that come after the Jimmy Caan scene?
Yes,
I
think it is after. Yeah.
Let me just check on that. Yeah, it's after. So in the original script, it was supposed to come the other way round.
Oh.
See, so the script is slightly out of sequence, guys, with the stuff you're watching. Now, this storyline between the two of them, I personally think this is the one thing that could have gone. Or it could have just been really short.
Yeah.
But James Caan was a big name, so they probably wanted to give him his screen time. It's not that the storyline is not interesting. It's not that it didn't happen. It did happen with the whole thing we'll see later. But it's overly long. It could be, it's the one sort of subplot that I think could have been really short, or could have actually been replaced with something more interesting.
The same, pretty much the same kind of the same kind of scene was transposed also to Casualties of War, which was subsequently transposed to Reservoir Dogs. So you have that, that same kind of promise me I won't die, I'm not going to die, am I? Kind of kind of thing that kind of leapfrogged from this, from a real story into
well, Casualties of War, of course, was also based on a true story.
Yes, it was. Yeah,
very good movie. Really difficult movie to watch.
It's a very hard movie to watch.
I saw that at the first UK screening at the London Film Festival. So again, look, we've got another. You see, look all these scenes with American and British logistics.
Yeah.
All to do with. I think that's where I think this scene here is when the map is taken on board the plane, and then it's all like in the tower, just as all the where the air bases are being sealed off. This is all the cuts between the various characters as they're getting ready, which comes right after Major Fuller gets told he's not going, played by Frank Grimes. Really good performance from him, and didn't see him do loads of other things.
No,
a shame.
No.
So that building behind them, it's a bit of a giveaway that it's shot in Holland, because if you look at the roof, you can clearly see the Dutch architecture of the house, but they've done it really well, because they shot the scene with a bloody great big tree in between the house, so that the roof is mainly obscured and it just looks like a big English country place. But it's like an estate, one of the traditional kind of big homes with walled gardens and all that kind of thing, not far from Dave Enter. So you've got this whole montage of everybody waking up in the morning, cuts to various different characters, including some of the characters that are not actually in the film. There's also stuff here about a young soldier clipping his various bits of accessories and stuff in close-ups, and then we pan up to his face, and none of that's not in the film, in the script.
I can see why that would really easily be disposed of, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's padding a running time. I'm sure it was all shot, but inevitably a lot of stuff ends up on the cutting room floor. It's great having this, though, to see.
Yes, really, really good reference.
Yeah, and it is interesting to see that some things in the finished film end up in the slightly different order, as is often the case when you're in the edit suite. Hang on, this scene works better here. That happens more often than you would think. So the Dakotas that you're seeing, which are all painted in the right colors for this particular operation, again, all these scenes were shot on the Deline airfield, where they actually really took off to do those scenes. The shots with the gliders, with all the guys going into the gliders, none of those gliders are functioning gliders. They're all props, and they built about 8 of them. And the morning that they were going to shoot them, they came out to shoot that scene, and all the wings were on the ground because the frost was so heavy and the materials were so light that it made the wings droop. So Alan Tomkins told me this story. So he had to go and buy these massive big iron bars and put them through the wings so the wings wouldn't droop. I had to reschedule that scene. So this scene with Urquhart and what's his name, Browning, that was not shot on the day it was supposed to be. This is when we find out that Urquhart doesn't like to fly, which is quite funny, seeing as he's in charge of the airborne forces for Arnhem. I don't know how many combat drops he'd done before Arnhem. I have a feeling I think he was in Sicily, because Frost was also in Sicily. But he wasn't, I don't think he was divisional commander in Sicily. I'd have to check his history on that. And you can see in the script, it's a series of cuts here. And you've got things here, like you've got shots of the actual sound of the air armada scaring things like cattle and horses on English farms.
Yeah.
And of course, those scenes, again, they're not in the film. There was one shot, I don't know if you noticed, with all the planes as they're leaving the runway, where you've got about 20 painted planes in the background. Did you see that?
Yeah.
So they would have all been painted on glass and dropped in the back of the shot. No CGI.
It looks fantastic.
It really does. Know, right? It really does.
And I mean, they really made like 10 or 12 Dakotas that they had. It definitely wasn't more than 15. They made it look like hundreds with the editing and how the film was cut on that. And actually, I'll just look up I'm just trying to remember who the editor was on the movie, because they did a really good job. I think it's somebody that Attenborough used quite a lot. A lot of these shots would have been done with would have been filmed by Peter McDonald, who I've interviewed previously before, and we're going to get him back again because YouTube took down the interview very annoyingly. But he was first camera operator with the main unit, and he also did some of the second unit on the film as well. There's one shot coming up that was specifically his idea that he showed to Attenborough and said, "Let's film it like this." I'll tell you what that is when we come to it. It was shot by Geoffrey Unsworth.
Right. Okay.
So he passed away in 78, sadly, but he shot 2001: Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
The first Superman movie and Superman 2, Murder on the Orient Express, and Zardoz.
Classic.
Yeah, that film is a whole other stream. So, yeah, a lot of clever cutting here of, again, making 10 planes seem like hundreds. It's very, very well done. And the drops for the film were filmed over 3 days. And I think it's on the first day they lost all the light. The sky completely changed right after the planes had taken off, and so all the footage from the first drop was completely unusable. So they had to stick their 3,000 extras back in and
reshoot.
And they had their extras jumping out of other planes, not just Dakotas, which they kept out of shot to increase the numbers. There's a shot of this working class street on a hill. That is the same street used in Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, where they do the song "Every Sperm is Sacred." It's the same street, if you remember that scene and that classic song. But yeah, I do love all the scenes with, like, you know, the people are in church and they hear the fleet coming over and everybody suddenly gets up and leaves the church, which back then was a big no-no. And then we cut to Horrocks and Vandeleur, which is Michael Caine and Edward Fox, driving along the side of every Allied vehicle and tank that clearly production design could get their hands on.
Hello, Joe.
Yeah. Just keep your tanks on the move. We can't afford to get behind schedule. Me and my friend used to quote these lines in our class all the time, but we would insert names of people from the class into the lines to make them more comical. And like, no one else would have found it funny, but we couldn't stop laughing and no one knew why. Yeah, so this scene of the road where they're all advancing, the tanks, that whole section was all done on a Dutch Army artillery range.
They do keep a little bit of humor on through it. There's a part where I think someone asked Michael Caine if he got the message, and he says, "I don't think I'm doing anything else this afternoon," or something.
Yeah, that's coming up now.
It's hilarious.
Think you'll be able to manage it? I've got nothing else planned for this afternoon. Yeah.
Very, very stiff upper lip.
Yeah, and I mean there's that great shot where you pan along the corner of the road, and they must have about 40 vehicles there, but they only had 4 working Shermans, and all of the other Sherman tanks that you see are actually fiberglass bodies built over 2 CV cars.
Yeah.
And see, if you really look in a couple of shots, you can see that some of the tank tracks don't move, but it's very cleverly edited because they always cut to close-ups of the tracks that are moving and then back to a wide. So you're never focusing on the tracks in the wide.
Yeah.
So little details like that make it.
We had a similar kind of thing with Band of Brothers.
Which Inside Man worked on for those people watching.
And I mean, funny enough, I dug out some of Alan Tomkins' artwork that he did for some of the vehicles, you know, these shells were sort of placed onto the chassis of various other vehicles. Yeah, really, really cleverly done.
Yeah, it was very clever because a lot of the tanks and stuff that were done for Band of Brothers, the German ones especially, they built them.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
they got things like old Allied APCs and then built the German tank bodies over the top of those for some of the vehicles. A lot of those were built by Steve, what's his name, the tank guy who was going to do Pegasus Bridge for us.
Yeah,
and but back then in the
T-36s as well.
Yeah, but in the 70s, there wasn't quite the uniformed level of knowledge. You didn't have so many living history groups and all that kind of stuff, and there was almost no working German tanks at all. People hadn't got round to, like, they didn't start restoring stuff until you know, like the working Tiger that's now in Bovington Tank Museum. Yeah, that wasn't working then. I don't even know that they had it then. I'm not sure when they got it, but there was no like working Tigers. So that's why they got various Allied, or I think it was West German tanks, and they did them up and made them look like Jag Panthers. It's not a bad look. It's not great, but it works. And now we've got the sequence with all the drops. And if you look in any of the shots, I think you'll never see more than 8 planes in one shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they had about 8 cameras for the shot. They had they had a camera plane above all the other planes, or slightly in front. They had a couple of cameras in the Dakotas, and then they had about 5 cameras on the ground, all camouflaged, so that none of the shots from above would pick up any of the crew below.
Yeah.
And then they had a load of extras ready to run onto the drop zone to then increase the numbers even further. It's amazing when you see these shots of all these parachutes dropping out. This is all real.
It does look incredible.
Yeah,
Oh, it's
it
just
really does. It
yeah.
really does look incredible.
Yeah, amazing stuff. It's just take the script onto that sequence. I like the bit where the Germans see the Armada going overhead, and he's like, "If only I had that sort of power at my disposal," you know. Interesting that there's a technical note here. I'm aware that the word switch used above is not a kosher screenwriting word, but now that we're all in Holland, I want to use it to indicate when we go from one place to another, all will be clear when we see the movie. So, you know, William Goldman just trying to make it easy for everybody to read it, I think. So there's a shot here with Captain Harry creaming himself as he lands. I don't think that's in the movie. There's one with Gavin, but I don't think there's one with him, because Gavin had a really bad landing and fractured his spine. Yeah, so that was, yeah, but he always liked to jump. And those shots you can see are of Ginkle Heath. So that heath where all the parachutes are coming down.
Yeah,
that's actually Ginkle Heath, just northeast of Arnhem. Just under 8, actually, sir. It's like actually that drop zone was further away. I think it was about 9.5, 10 miles. And that was the one that wasn't used on the first day. It was used on the second or third drop. I think the big drop on the second day they used that one. Why they would drop even further away on the second day kind of is a mystery to me. Oh yeah, and that's we have the meeting with the Germans. Now this dialogue scene between Beatrix and Ludwig here doesn't come in this running order in the final edit. And also, if you look at the dialogue, it's very, very different from the dialogue. That scene comes a bit later. You've got the scene with Rundstedt first, before that, where his guy comes in and says, "Paratroopers have landed, sir. This is 6 miles from here. Don't forget my cigars." I mean, that's a great, funny line. There's, you know, it's like the bit with Anthony Hopkins. "Don't forget my golf clubs, Wicks. Do you think you'll be needing those on my dinner jacket? You think you're going to be needing that? Well, let's hope so." Yeah. So we cut into various different units landing. I think we've got the scene with the lunatic asylum coming up soon, which again is another good moment of humor.
Yeah, I think it also I think illustrates the irony quite well. It's quite a nice depiction of the whole sort of irony of this particular mission as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Do you think they know something we don't?
Yeah, that's
that whole.
It's a really, really good line, actually.
Yeah.
Is that why in the film, and I guess there's and I hope I'm saying the right thing, where the Germans seem to have a I guess a report on their desk.
Yeah. What happened?
In denial about it, or they brush it to the side.
Initially, because the Allies landed so far away from the bridges, they were confused. They thought, well, they can't be going after the bridges. They've landed too far away. So what are they going after? That's why the SS general thought they were there to capture him.
Yeah,
he
thought it was some kind of commando raid.
I see.
But obviously
then it became
evident.
It's Model, right? Is that his name?
Yeah,
Model.
Model,
Fed
yeah.
Marshal Model. Yeah. Says in one line. But then the other thing that happened, of course, was I think it was either in the 101st or 82nd area. It was on an American glider. The whole plans for the operation were brought along, which they never should have been taken into the air. When they first found them, they thought the Germans that found them thought they were fake.
Right.
But by the end of the second day, they realized that they weren't fake, and they had the whole operation laid out, drop zones, resupply schedule, everything.
Yeah, I think after Mincemeat, I think it was there was this kind of, well, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
Are these real, or
yeah, that's why they treated
really
it with a lot of skepticism. Of course, our own just watched Operation Mincemeat, so she'll know the context.
Yes.
Yeah, Bella, the Dutch people are very welcoming, and I've found we went to meet the mayor of Arnhem and also of Daventer. They could not have been more helpful with us doing our recce's and, you know, about us doing some pickup shots there for the trailer of Paratrooper. And I mean, if I went there to film the Arnhem episode, the majority of which would film in Daventer, I could tell that we would get maximum cooperation from them. They were so keen to help. It was like, what can we do, you know? And they kept the charges that we had to pay because we closed off a load of roads. They kept those charges down to the absolute minimum.
I think in general, the Dutch just are very, very nice people.
Yeah.
If you read a lot of memoirs of soldiers, particularly the American soldiers that were in Holland throughout the Second World War, they were highly complimentary of the Dutch and said that these were, without doubt, the loveliest people that they've met throughout the duration of their time in Europe.
Yeah, you know? I remember that the soldiers, the Allied soldiers said, "Yeah, Parisians, pleased to see us because they want our money. The Dutch people, pleased to see us because we liberated their country."
Yeah.
And but then actually the French themselves actually liberated Paris because they rose up and kicked the Germans out.
Yeah.
And you can see that in the film Is Paris Burning? Great film. Not to be confused with the documentary about drag artists of the same name.
that's Paris is Burning.
Yeah. Whereas the film is called Is Paris Burning? So it's pretty similar title. You could easily rent the wrong one.
Yes.
We cut to the scene with Gavin, sort of how far away is Nijmegen Bridge? Half a mile, maybe more. This is a fiction. Gavin himself didn't make a move towards Arnhem Bridge, and also, Nijmegen Bridge on the first day. He would have been in the headquarters, but there was a big cluster F with the Americans there, where they suddenly realised halfway through the first day after they dropped, no specific unit had been assigned to take the bridge immediately, which is the main objective. So that was a really grave error as well. Yeah, worth a fortune on vinyl, Sterling. If you've got the soundtrack on vinyl, it's very rare. Nice big double spread as well. Now, this is the bit with the lunatics in the woods. And a number of very well-known British actors in this scene, playing the junior officers to Sean Connery's general. There's Inside Man's mother playing one of the lunatics there.
I'll be sure to tell her that.
Yeah. I like the shot of the old guy who's like saluting them.
Yeah,
because he's clearly like a veteran, probably with PTSD or something from World War I.
Yeah, I actually find that a little bit. It actually brings a little bit of a lump to my throat. Just
yeah,
that
no, absolutely.
Shot, yeah.
But that's like that's the scene where they first mentioned that the radios are not working. And also so many problems with those radios that again could have easily been fixed. I better advance the script a little bit.
So it's a metaphor. Or did it happen?
Sorry, oh, you mean with the lunatic asylum?
Yes.
Well, it did happen. It was bombed, and that did happen.
Okay.
They all came out and were wandering about. And
but it feels like some strange metaphor.
Well, it's an irony. That you know, as he said, do you think they know something we don't? Yeah, and actually, that line in the script is "Let's hope they don't know something we don't know," is really clumsy.
Yeah,
the way Connery said it is much better, and as I said, he rewrote most of his lines to suit him. And I mean,
I kind of get the feeling that that Richard Attenborough is one of those sorts of directors. In fact, I know that he was one of those sorts of directors who had the script and just said, you know, paraphrase, just, you know, as long as we're getting the essence of what's here.
Yeah, I think Connery naturalized all of his dialogue, and it's certainly, you know, I've read the whole script, and it's his dialogue. The way he says it works a lot better.
Yeah, it really does.
Now, this is the scene of the advance of 30 Corps. So this is the first, what you would call the first major action sequence in the film. Hugely complex second unit sequence with some shots of Michael Caine inserted, which were all shot on one day, and then all of the other action stuff was all shot on different days. I think it took them about 3-4 days to shoot this sequence. A lot of very clever editing. And of course, at first, you see the Germans really getting hammered by the British artillery. But then the next thing it shows you is how quickly they recover and fight back, even after taking that hammering.
Yeah, yeah.
And that sets the standard for what they're like the whole way through the battle. So yeah, we're coming up to the bit where they ambush the first tanks. And the Germans did another thing the Germans did frequently was they would hide in the ditches which ran along the side of the raised roads, like 2 or 3 man teams with Panzerfaust. They'd let the first 3 tanks go past, and then they'd like blow up the 4th one, and then the ones that were in front of it would be cut off. The road was so narrow, the ones behind it couldn't get past, and then you'd have an AT gun which would pick off the ones in front further down the road. So huge number of casualties. 30 Corps in the first 3 days, and much heavier resistance than was expected, because the unit on the front line was an elite unit. It was actually German paratroopers and also 1 battalion of the SS from the 9th, I think.
Yeah, the SS. Was it the SS Grenadiers or something?
Yeah. Now there's been about 20 board games made of this operation. Some of them just cover the battle in Arnhem, about half probably, and then the rest cover the whole thing. I've got nearly all of them. So that's why I know what units were where, because you spend ages setting them up on the board.
Yeah.
The most detailed one is called Hell's Highway and Devil's Cauldron. The map is so big, it's 2 separate games, and when you put the map all together, this covers the whole operation. It's about 25 feet long.
Wow.
With thousands of counters. But I hate the game system. The map looks beautiful. The map's amazing, but the game system is just, it's so bogged down in detail. It's not for me. I like board games that play really quick.
Yeah.
You don't have to keep reading the rules every 2 minutes. Do you know what type of planes these are, Inside Man, that come in? Are you a plane guy? I'm not a plane guy.
I'm not really a plane person.
Fortunately, that's why we have RrrrMmmmm on the stream. She knows every plane off by heart in World War II.
I'm not a plane person.
I bet Big Daddy MRA will probably know what type. I think it was mentioned in the script earlier. Yeah, you see, it says in the script here, the Germans still scared but incredibly disciplined. Wait until they can take out the lead tanks. This is interesting. Look, written in the script, the Germans are blasting away now, creaming the shit out of the Irish Guards. That's in the script, creaming the shit out of the Irish Guards. That's great, that. Vanderloo in his scout car.
He certainly wrote for the reader, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean,
it really wrote for the reader.
You need to be able to visualize it. I think that's actually a talent of a good script writer, is use as less words as possible, but get the visuals very strong so people can see it.
Yeah. He's not sort of overly prosy, if you know what I mean. It's not.
No, it's not up its arse.
No.
The Big Daddy MRI is asking you which scene, Lance.
Oh, in the scene with the 30 Corps breaking out, when Michael Caine calls in the RAF, I just wondered what type of British fighter bombers those were. I don't think they were Spitfires or Hurricanes, but I could be wrong.
Yeah,
Typhoons. That's right, they're Typhoons. And Bella Bill said Harvard's pretending to be Typhoons. Very good.
Thank you.
So it's good that RM has transferred her plane knowledge to Bella Bill in the chat there.
But I do want to say something that's kind of interesting about the film is that it's, about an hour in. We do get to see action, and then of course by the second hour, it's almost like they're at the point of no return.
Yeah.
It's very interesting that they balance, or at least the film seems to be balanced in that manner, and certainly, I think it allows anybody who's viewing it and who doesn't know anything about this incident greater understanding, because if it had been kind of compressed into an hour 20 minutes or less, you might not have gotten the impression or understood this.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the film's running time. I do think the flaw of the film is that there are some scenes that could have been cut in favor of other scenes that were cut from the finished cut completely. Just going back to the scene that we've just missed, where the German infantryman finds the plans in a battered American glider. Richard Attenborough must have said, "Can we cast the most sort of overweight, kind of regular looking, nerdish guy? I don't want him to look like a good soldier. I want this to look like kind of a guy who's been press ganged into the German army, who looks really nervous." And he doesn't look like a good soldier. He kind of nervously enters the glider. He's slightly chubby, and he's the guy that finds the plans that are, crucial. I quite like, and then you see him standing to attention later in the scene where he's got them, all sort of proud that he's done something.
Yes, what a fortunate happenstance for him.
He is just like a regular German. Then you've got this scene here where everything's not working for General Urquhart with Connery, with the communications, and his Batman comes up to him and says, "Cup of tea, sir." And he said, "Yeah, Hancock, I've got lunatics laughing at me from the woods. My original plan has been scuppered now that the jeeps haven't arrived and my communications are completely broken down. Do you really think any of that can be helped by a mug of tea? Couldn't hurt, sir."
Yeah. Yes.
Of those jeeps that got ambushed, by the way, of the special jeep squadron, half of them did make it to the bridge. So they were ambushed. They were ambushed at a crossroads. The Germans let 3 of them go past, and then they ambushed the second half. So they got separated into 2 groups. And the ones that raced through the ambush, they did get to the bridge. And Freddie Goff was at the bridge, defending the bridge along with Frost. But there isn't a character that represents him. It's just assumed that they weren't effective as people thought they were going to be, which is also true. And then we've now got the scene with the Germans discussing about, counterattacking and blowing up. The guy wants to blow up the bridges immediately, and Modal says, "No, we're not going to blow the bridges up." And he's still of the mindset, why would they land 8 miles away if they're going to catch, if the main objective is the bridge? He still doesn't believe the plans. Now the plans have been recovered, he still doesn't believe it. He thinks it's a ruse.
Yeah, narcissistic or what?
Yeah. It's hard to say how much those plans being recovered later influenced the battle, because by the time they realised what the true objectives were, it was obvious. Now this scene with the bridge,
I think you're right. I think it was already
by
the time they actually landed, it was a fait accompli, to be honest with you.
This scene with the British Frost's battalion advancing on the River Road towards the bridge. Yeah. They go past the set of Kate Host's house, who's known as the Angel of Arnhem. She should definitely have her own movie made about her. I've thought about writing a script about her life, actually. Fascinating life with a tragic end. She was struck by a police car that was involved in a chase just down the road from her house. So this amazing, heroic woman that led this incredible life. And 2 of her kids died as well. One of them jumped out of a tree and landed on an old German landmine.
Oh, goodness.
So she had a really tragic life, and despite all the good that she did in the battle, which is really sad. But these scenes were all filmed by a purpose-built set that was built near the river down by Daventer, and they constructed the church, which is hardly used in the film, which was known as Lonsdale's Church. You see a bit of it later, but he gave a great speech, Lonsdale, in the church to rally the men when they were demoralised. But it's not in the film. It may well be in the script. We'll see. But that was all a set. So Kate de Host's house was a set because they knew they were going to blow it up. The church was a set because they knew they were going to batter that. So all of those little buildings in that little sequence with the British moving past, that's all a set. I was very surprised to learn that, actually, because they just look like real buildings. Now we cut to the scene with the 101st.
It's funny because that really kind of directly translates over to again Band of Brothers and Alan Tomkins' work on Band of Brothers, particularly the Eindhoven episode.
Yeah. So this scene where they're Elliot Gould and they're running up to the bridge.
Well, the Zond Bridge, isn't it?
Yeah, in the script, this whole sequence is completely different. There were flat guns defending the bridge. You've got a bit of a battle with the flat guns. They cut all of that. When I saw this bridge explode in the film and it cuts to a wide shot, I thought that's a model. It wasn't. It was full size, and it was built over a kind of. It wasn't built over a river or a canal. It was built at the end of a lake, which had kind of a foot coming out of it, sort of an area that looked kind of like a canal. And that's also the same lake where they filmed the close-ups of the river crossing.
Right.
Yeah, with Robert Redford, and also like the shots of people struggling in the water and getting machine gun and stuff were all filmed in that same lake near this bridge that they built full size and blew up. But if you look in the script, there's a whole load of dialogue here between the Americans trying to take the bridge, flat guns firing, all of this stuff. None of that's in the finished film. There's a bazooka guy taking out a flak tower at the Grave Bridge when they capture the Grave Bridge, and we don't even see them capture the Grave Bridge. It's now a radio line. Hey, we just heard from the 82nd they captured the Grave Bridge completely intact. So all of that's cut.
Yeah.
Goddamn 30 Corps ain't gonna get to the Grave Bridge until the goddamn Somme Bridge gets fixed. That's about as good as my American accent. Elliot Gould is great in this, though.
He really is fantastic.
Yeah, I love Elliot Gould.
And still alive, which is nice. And his character is an amalgamation of 3 different characters. So Bobby Stout is not a real person. Then we cut back to 30 Corps saying that they're not going to make Eindhoven before night on the first day. They should have been past it already, so they're already way behind schedule. But Vanderleur's not worried. It would be bad form for the cavalry to arrive ahead of schedule. In the nick of time, we'll do nicely. Yeah, and then we cut to the scene with the Germans, but this is all in a different order in the original script. See, in the original script, the scene with Stout comes after the next scene with Urquhart, which we haven't seen yet, where he decides to drive away from the main unit and investigate what's going on because he's lost touch with all of his men moving into Arnhem. And then here's the shot where this scene 274 on the screen, British airborne area, narrow wooded road. 2 German soldiers have rifle and mortars. More and more and more of them begin to set up. We get the impression that General Urquhart is going to have a difficult time getting back to his unit. I wish they'd kept that in, and I know they filmed that, and I know that's in a version. That's in one of the cuts because somebody I know said he'd seen that scene. I can't remember if it was in the weird video edit that I saw. So this is Urquhart on one of the main road going into Arnhem. I'm not sure where this was filmed. And then they suddenly start getting shelled by the Germans, who are now all over the place. So yeah, we're see again in the script, these scenes are all completely in a different sequence. Yeah, this is scene 278, and we're an hour and however long in, 20 minutes or something. That's the scene that I'm seeing now, which is 1 hour 12 minutes and 30 seconds on the YouTube. Now he's cut off from his headquarters and from the units advancing into Arnhem, stuck in the middle. Then we cut to one of the best scenes in the movie, which is Frost's guys, who, because they took the river road, they managed to bypass the Germans who were driving down towards the river to cut off the main advance. They managed to get past them first with pretty light resistance and got to the bridge ahead of everybody else. The funny thing was, if they'd got there an hour earlier, they would have found 20 German vehicles there with a whole load of SS soldiers. But because those guys had been sent there to guard the bridge and they were like, nothing's happening here, so they drove down to Nijmegen. And that's the same unit that crosses the bridge the morning of the following day. So if that unit had stayed there, they may well have never even taken the bridge on one side. Now, all these buildings under the bridge, this is all a set. So these were all completely constructed for the film. That area is now a car park. And it was a car park then, which is why they chose it, because they could build the set. But it's a much more sophisticated car park now with iron grills and all sorts of stuff. I love the music in this scene as well. You know, the sort of gentle piano is there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really atmospheric. It's that sort of, it builds the tension really well. And then you've got this poor family, this guy with his elderly mum. All right, chaps, we're in here. She's like, who are these people coming into my house? And it's, it's people coming and tearing down all your curtains and putting your furniture up against the windows. And then I do like that Anthony Hopkins is like, I'm terribly sorry about all this, Very British.
But he's got a very understated manner, hasn't he, in this? He just comes across as being just very lovable, I think.
Yeah, his
very lovable
portrayal of
character.
Frost is great.
Oh, it's fantastic portrayal.
Frost had a really tragic life after the war. His son committed suicide, and his daughter also died before him. He had a son and a daughter, and they both predeceased him.
Oh, dear me.
I only found that out pretty recently, actually, because they did a special episode with Frost on This Is Your Life. You can see it. It's on YouTube. There's a whole load of the battalion all unite with him. And he's actually ambushed with the big red book when he's checking some scenes on Bridge Too Far in the edit suite.
Oh, right.
So they showed some clips of Bridge Too Far on that episode. That whole episode is on YouTube. You can find it. Just put Colonel Frost, This Is Your Life, and you'll see it. But his son and his daughter are both on that show.
That's quite.
So as a result of watching that, I was like, where are they now? I'd love to talk to them. Both gone, sadly.
But there's a very good making of Bridge Too Far as well. That's really from back in the day.
That's right.
An old TV documentary that was made. Really good. Really, really very good.
Yeah, it's on the Blu-ray anniversary edition.
Oh, is it? Oh,
yeah, and it's also on YouTube. Very grainy, but it's there. Now, this is the scene where the guy with the umbrella, they all kind of approach the pillbox. I did wonder why they just didn't go up the side steps and attack it with the flamethrower in the first place. But I don't think it really looked quite as pillbox-ish as it does in the film. It was a little bit more discreet. Yeah. From what I'm told. And it was a small flak tower as well, because you can see it's burnt out and it had a flak tower on the top of it.
Yeah.
So I think it probably looked more like an armored shed, but had concrete. So they probably didn't know if there were machine guns in it. And this is the first scene where British soldiers get killed.
And is it true that this gentleman walked out on there with an umbrella?
Absolutely true.
Okay.
Yeah, and he actually did survive the war. In the film, he's an amalgamation of 3 people. But he did actually survive the war. He also, there was a number of other scenes that he's a very heroic man. But they wanted his character to represent like 3 different officers of Frost's, so he also represented some of the officers that died. So in the in the movie. Anyway, we'll see when that. Spoiler alert, but I'm sure most people have seen it. Yeah, so that's the attack on the bridge. Yeah, we'll deal with them afterwards when it gets dark. Now, the guy who's with the guy with the flamethrower, these two actors, one of them is Alan Armstrong,
Yeah,
whose son is also an actor, has been in loads of films in really big roles. I wrote to Alan Armstrong once to invite him to a play of mine, and he did actually write back to me, which was very nice. He was also in Get Carter. He was also in Our Friends in the North, probably his best ever performance, which is a drama series that anybody should track down. Brilliant show. Should do a special on that, actually, for sure.
I did a little bit of work on that, actually.
Oh, we definitely got to do it. I know some stories because Danny Webb was in it, and of course they replaced the director 1.5 episodes in, which caused a bit of a kerfuffle. But the other guy that's with him, I don't know if you remember Inside Man, the British advert for the can of squirty cream that you used to put on your jelly.
Yes, I do. Yeah,
it's cream, but in a can, and all you have to do is go squirt, squirt, squirt. That guy is the guy with him. That's the actor with Alan Armstrong. The guy from that advert.
Yeah, yes, it is.
Yeah. He actually passed away quite young of cancer, that actor.
Oh, did he?
He died in his 50s, sadly. Yeah.
Oh, dear me.
Yeah, better hit the slit first time. So this really happened. There was an ammo dump behind the pillbox. The flamethrower did hit the pillbox. The whole thing did explode. The bridge had been recently repainted. So all the paint, which was inflammable, caught fire, and the bridge was burning all night. So for that reason, the British decided, well, they couldn't cross the bridge to try and capture the other side because they'd be illuminated. And also they didn't know what was on the other side. And the other side didn't have many buildings at all. I think there were like 3 houses to the right or something, cottages. So there would have been very difficult to have dug in on the southern side and defend it with the numbers that they had. So they were better off staying where they were among the buildings. And now we're coming to the following day. So Peter McDonald said to Richard Attenborough, I've got a great idea for a shot. How about we put the camera on the road? And if you watch when the vehicles move, the first thing you'll see is the aerials coming over the road. That was Peter McDonald's idea for that shot. And this is one of the best battle sequences in a movie ever made, in my opinion. So this really happened. This was the reconnaissance unit of the 9th SS. They had about 32 vehicles. They would play a much bigger role in the battle than is actually portrayed in the film, because the ones that didn't get across the river and get into the town when they charged over the river stayed on the southern side and entrenched themselves in a brickwork area which had a superb view of fire of the river road, and they massacred all the paratroopers the following day that were trying to reinforce the bridge who came along the river road. That scene is in my script because it's not in the film. But this sequence with the vehicles coming over, which on the running time of the film starts at 1:21 on the YouTube version, they rehearsed this in a car park and went through the movement that all the vehicles would do. They had about 40 stuntmen and I think about another 20 extras. A lot of these vehicles were actually British and they were converted to look German, and they were brought over on a special cargo container that brought all the vehicles over that they used from England for the film. That's in the documentary. You can see them landing at the port in Holland. And the actual commander, because this is Grabner, was the name of the German commander who charged the unit over the bridge. He was actually in a British captured scout car that he'd commandeered. I think that it had been left behind at Dunkirk or something, and the Germans did repurposed equipment, especially towards the end of the war. So that's my friend Paul Copley that fires the first Piat shot
That's a lovely shot. That
And he fired that for real. He told me.
I love that shot.
So this whole sequence took about. Alan Tomkins said to me it took about 2 weeks to film the whole sequence. And they had to shut down the bridge for 2 weeks, and they built a ferry. The production actually built a ferry that would run for the population of Arnhem to take them across the river, because the other bridge, Nelson Mandela Bridge, which is up the road, that bridge hadn't been built at that time. Also, if you watch this sequence on different versions of the VHS, it's edited differently on different releases, and it's got different shots in it. There's one version of it that doesn't have the guy throwing the grenade towards the end of British Para.
Right.
There's different shots of the Germans getting shot on the armored cars. That's one thing that's been inconsistent between the different releases, is the edit of this scene. It's very subtle. You wouldn't, unless you were looking for it, you wouldn't really notice. But I've seen the film so many times, so I notice everything.
Yeah. It's
Now, this battle actually lasted about 6 hours in reality, until the Germans gave up. And here it's all covered in about sort of 15, 20 minutes. And the reason that you never see the left side of the bridge is because there's a massive big modern block of flats there. So they set the camera up so that they never covered that side. It's interesting. You can see all the different cuts with all the different people firing, listing all the shot numbers. Look, we're on 367 now.
unbelievable.
There's a couple of lines here that are not in the film. So Carlyle got wounded. No harm done. Must you get wounded in each and every action? I would strive for consistency, sir. You know that. That's a good line. That's not in the film.
That is funny.
Yeah. I mean, that's quite in keeping with Carlyle's character, because he makes a joke in every scene he's in, even when he's dying. Yeah, and so here we got Paul Copley. So when they were filming this scene, when Anthony Hopkins ran from house to house because they were under sniper fire from Germans in the church, the real Colonel Frost was on set, and he told him off after they'd done the take, and he said, "You can't do it like that." He's like, "What did I do wrong?" No, I would never run in front of the men. I would walk calmly from house to house and show no fear. I never ran like that. And like Anthony Hopkins and Attenborough had a word and said, "We can't put that on film because no one will believe it or look really silly." So they kept it with him running, but he didn't. He just would walk from one side to the other. Yeah, and then we cut to the basement, and it's with Cornish, the medical guy. How are things? And that's when you've got that line. I was a bit surprised to find Beatrix Panzer troops here, sir. And you'll see in the original script, that line is not in the script. That's the scene there. It's got the stuff about them saying we're surrounded. We hold the north end of the bridge. The Germans hold the south. Probably by now the church tower and most of the entire town. So what you're saying is we're surrounded. Something like that. And then it cuts. But the next two lines in that scene are, I was a bit surprised to find Beatrix Panzer troops here. Well, I'm sure you didn't believe all that stuff about we're only going to be fighting old men, women and children. So they must have added that in on the day. Good line.
Yeah, it's a very good line.
Yeah, so this is the scene with Urquhart. He's trying to get to he's trying to rally his various units, which are all out of communication with each other because they can't, the radios aren't working. All the routes that they're trying to take in that they'd all planned to use are all now blocked by the Germans, and all the units are getting mixed up and intermingled, so it's all getting very messy. And so now he realizes he can't fix it. He's got to get back to headquarters because he's been away from headquarters for like 6 crucial hours at this point.
Yeah, and Lance, it looks like you've gotten a super chat from RRTNZ.
Oh, thank you for pointing that out. I'll read it out now. Classic film. Would you say it's a cultural trait of British people to celebrate heroic failures as much or even more than our victories?
Good question, there. Good question.
I'm going to let me ponder that, mate, and I'll come back to that. Although Inside Man can jump in.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where you have to recognize the failures as well as the victories.
Yeah.
You I mean, that's being human, I suppose. You can't be you can't constantly call yourself a victor unless you acknowledge your defeats.
Yeah, I mean, when I first watched this movie, I think I was probably about 11, I was really annoyed at the end because I
Yeah,
was
me
annoyed
too.
that we lost, and
Yeah.
more than that, I was annoyed because we could have won.
Yeah.
With a few 5 or 6 changes in the operation, or even 2, we could have won. Now that sequence where one of the officers gets shot, they carry him into the civilian's house. Urquhart's there, bearing in mind this is a man who's not often been on the front line of battle, and suddenly a German private saw them through the window and he pulled out his pistol and shot him through the window. That all happened exactly like that. And that officer did survive and later escaped with the resistance. And that scene is covered in Band of Brothers episode 9, I think, where they show the what was called Operation Pegasus, which took place several weeks after.
Yes, it's actually in it's 6, I think.
Oh, is it in 6?
I think it's episode 6.
Crossroads. It's in Crossroads, isn't it?
Crossroads was 5. 6 was what was episode 6 called?
Oh well, we'll cover that when we do the Band of Brothers stream. But for who probably doesn't know, Operation Pegasus was the Dutch resistance. Loads of British paratroopers hid from the Germans when they got cut off, and about 400 of them were rescued. And they were rescued by the 101st, who took boats over to rescue them and bring them back. And this is the scene with Elliot Gould, who most people will recognise from the Indiana Jones movies, the good ones, that is.
Or MASH.
Was Elliot Gould in MASH?
He was in the movie MASH, in the Altman movie with Donald
I was going to say, I don't remember him in the TV show.
Yeah, fantastic performance in MASH.
He gives I mean, this is the only scene he's in, near enough, and he gives a brilliant performance in this scene.
Yeah.
Where he's trying to be upbeat. Won't you please sit down? You know, that's the funny thing about fog. It moves. We you know.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, you're talking about Denham Elliott, not Elliot Gould.
Denham Elliott. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
You must correct me when I make these mistakes.
Yeah. Denham Elliott. Yeah. Fantastic. Fantastic actor.
So General Urquhart getting stuck in the attic at a crucial point on the first day of the battle, in this Dutch civilian house, and that house is marked. I've been there. It's just down the road from the Hartenstein hospital. Not Hartenstein, sorry, the Arnhem hospital. Yeah, he was really trapped there, and a German tank did park right outside. So they were really stuck. There's a couple of lines from that scene with Denham Elliott that were cut. Sosabowski says at the end of the scene, I feel an overwhelming urge to play Castrate the Weatherman. And the squadron leader doesn't understand, and he says, it's an old Polish game, you know. So that they must have cut that.
Yeah.
So this is the liberation of Eindhoven. This was shot in Deventer, in the market square of Deventer, the same square where they shot the scene with the Jeeps at the beginning outside the cinema. It's the same square, but from different angles. And that church that you can see behind Michael Caine, that's the main church in Deventer, which also doubles for the church in Arnhem, which you see in the background of several shots. And yeah, like everybody in Deventer town turned out to be an extra in this scene. Like everybody wanted in. And the British extras that went over to play the British soldiers, they said they had the craziest time over there because word got round all of Holland that there was this British unit making a movie, and Dutch girls came from all over Holland to try and see if they could, get lucky with one of the stars. And he said it was nuts. You go into a bar and there's 20 of them, and they'll open their handbags and show you how many condoms they've got. And that's in one of the biographies of one of the guys who was there, called Albertini Sebastian or something. He's written a little book, The Boys at the Bridge. You can get it on Amazon. I've got a copy.
Yeah. It's funny. A very similar thing happened whilst shooting Band of Brothers. There was just opposite Hatfield Studios. That you had the Galleria, and there was a bar there called Sheila's, and of course we used to kind of go to Sheila's afterwards, and we put on these faux American accents, these dreadful American accents, and we're in this Steven Spielberg movie just over there, and it was it was pretty
people
pretty
playing on that name a bit there.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. And anyone who any of the guys from Band of Brothers who may actually see this, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. They'll have exactly the same memories.
So we're on the scene now where James Caan is looking for his injured captain on the battlefield, and I'll comment on that in a second. But if you just before that, we had the scene with Gavin and Captain Harry, his Dutch advisor, saying every road to Nijmegen is blocked, we can't get in. The scene where you saw the platoon getting massacred in the weird edit that I saw on video was right before that scene. So that's where it came in the film. It was just before this scene in the script.
Right.
That castle in the background of one of the shots where he's picking up Harry's body, that unusual landmark, that's not far from Arnhem. So why they chose this location was Alan Tomkins was driving past it on the way back because they shot most of the stuff at Arnhem Bridge first, so Deventer Bridge first, because they wanted to get that action scene in the can, because they used the action scene of the bridge attack to pre-sell the movie, and it was very successful. They were in profit before the movie was even released, just from sales, overseas sales.
Yeah, that's the way to
so
do it.
He was driving back from shooting in Deventer. He went past this big wood and he saw that they were felling a load of trees, and he went in and asked what they were doing, and they said they were doing some kind of clearance of a wood or something. There'd been a load of trees that had fallen in a storm earlier in the year, and they were only just starting to cut up. So the landscape looked very kind of battered and war-torn. So he had a word with the foreman. They got permission to film there, and that's where they shot the stuff also with James Caan riding around in the Jeep. It's all in the same place, which was shot very early in the morning. That's real mist in the background of that shot. Well, I'm sure they had a smoke machine as well.
That was probably just the crew just smoking the odd cigar.
Almost certainly.
When I say odd cigar, I do mean odd cigar.
I mean, yes, I hear you.
Yeah.
All of this stuff did happen. This guy did go and find his captain. The captain had a head wound that if anybody had left him on the battlefield, he would have been dead within a couple of hours.
Yeah.
It's also true that he had to pause with the Jeep, because by this time the German lines, even in the American section, were intermingling with the paratroopers. It was like Indian country all over the place.
It was
and
very
German did come right up and nearly piss on his head.
Wow.
When he was waiting to move, this German came up and took a wee, like right in front of him, and still didn't see him. So this sequence all did really happen, but I just feel it's too long, and it brings the pace of the movie to a massive halt, including the sequence that's about to follow it with the hospital. It's a good scene. The acting's great. I have no issue with it being in the film. I do think it's the one narrative that really slows the movie down.
It does slow it down. It does a lot.
Yeah, Bella, that's all true about Lathbury. He partially recovered from his temporary paralysis by the time he was rescued. He could just about walk, I think. And actually, when we interviewed Peter McDonald, so the shots of the POV from the Jeep filming towards the Germans, that's Peter on the back of the Jeep with the camera, and the stuff where you can't see Khan. He's on another Jeep with the camera, and he said it was absolute batshit crazy filming this sequence. He nearly fell off the Jeep about 5 times. He had to be strapped in with a harness in the end. First few times he thought he could just hold on to the bar and camera in the other hand. No. That was not a good idea.
Yeah, they're not particularly well known for their suspension, the Willys Jeeps.
Yeah, I've been on one. My God.
Yeah, yeah. A bit
Yeah,
of
you know you're in a
bone
tin can
shakers.
when you're running around on one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, look, by the time we get to the end of this section and we're in the field hospital where we are now, scene 445.
Wow.
That's an incredible stack up of scenes.
Yeah. Because they've included, like, when they've visualized all the different cuts to different people at different locations in the battle scene, they've listed all of them almost like separate scenes, but a lot of them are just separate shots. So this is a shooting script. It's it's ready to go for set.
Right. Yeah.
So everybody knows, oh yeah, we've got to get that shot now. We've got to get this shot now. So it's almost broken down like a shot list. Not quite, but as close as you can take it. Now, this actor who plays the Doctor, was he in MASH? No, he wasn't in MASH, but I've seen him in something big, but I can't remember what.
Yeah, he's one of those instantly recognizable faces that you just don't know the name to.
Yeah, I'm going to look him up, actually. Somebody in chat's probably going to jump in. Let me have a quick look, see if I can. I mean, again, this really happened. This guy did take the guy to the doctor. The doctor refused to see him because he looked like he was near death anyway. And, you know, as a medic, you prioritize on the battlefield, like you see them doing in Saving Private Ryan, going along to the different wounded, priority and all that. Let me just see if I can find this guy. I don't know what the character's name is. He's just Doctor, probably. Because, yeah, he's an American. He's not a British medical orderly.
I think he's actually quite a senior officer, isn't he? I think is he a major or something in that?
It could be a US lieutenant. Have a look. John Ratzenberger.
I think he's quite a higher rank than that.
Yeah, John Ratzenberger is in the 82nd. He's the chunky guy from Cheers. He's in this movie.
Right.
Yeah, you can easily miss him if you're not looking. I reached out to David Orker, who played Taffy as well, not that long ago, to try and interview him. He's still around.
Taffy, yeah.
And Garrick Hagan, who played Biggs in Star Wars, is Lieutenant Rafferty in this medical scene coming up right now, where he says, I want you to count really fast, Lieutenant. Count to 10 really quickly. Arrest this man for 10 seconds. So the guy that does that fast count, that's Biggs from Star Wars. Who, of course, had most of his scenes cut from the first film. Yeah, I can't find the name of this American.
He's got a great face, though. He's got a great
That's
face.
what he was in. You're right, Bella Bill. He was one of the doctors in the Andromeda strain. He was the main older doctor guy. One of the 3 that go in the bunker and everything. Yeah. Great actor. I can't remember his name. Somebody in chat wants to look up the Andromeda strain on IMDb. I've got too many windows open as it is. You'll see him. But he's great in this scene. Him and Jimmy Caan play this scene so straight.
Yeah.
Is it David Ocker?
No, he's playing a British character. He's a British actor.
Okay, so let me see. Oh, let's see.
Yeah, well, that's Garrick Hagan, who's on my screen now, playing the American MP. No, I'd have to look up the Andromeda strain to find out the name of that guy. Again, I mean, so the running time of this scene from the point that he goes to retrieve his captain's body up to the point that, you know, the doctor saves the life and all that, it's a good 10 minutes. And I mean, if this film was made today, that scene would be like 90 seconds tops, the whole thing, probably.
Yeah.
Because it's just obviously the style of storytelling and fast-paced editing has all changed. I'm not saying I want that in this film, but I just think that whole sequence was labored. And then as soon as we cut to Elliot Gould, right, okay, guys, you know, let's go. And they're building the Bailey Bridge, which is a brilliant scene. They built it for real.
Arthur Hill.
Arthur Hill, that's him. Thank you, Sterling Moose. Yeah, I just said, and Bella as well. Little race in the chat, always healthy. Yeah, I love this whole sequence with the building of the Bailey Bridge. And again, they're not building over an actual river. It's an inlet on a lake, not that far from, it's between Deventer and Arnhem. It's actually a country park where that was shot.
It does look rather nice, to be honest.
We saw between the building of the Bailey Bridge, we cut to Connery trapped up in the loft with his other officer. And if you look at the guy who's Clements is the name of the other officer, if you look at the actor, you'll see he's got a ridiculously big moustache, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Urquhart's own account of the Battle of Arnhem, which is, I think it's just called The Battle of Arnhem, written by him. It's a book. I've got it. It's out of print now. When he's recounting that scene, the first thing he says is, while we were trapped up in this attic, I couldn't help but notice the rather uncannily large moustache that Clements had that was constantly staring at me from across the room. It unnerved me. So they took that and said to the actor, right, you're getting a big, ridiculous looking moustache, and that's why it's there. So, yeah, I like the attention to detail with the building of the Bailey Bridge, like the old fashioned crane that you've got in one shot. Really nice production design. Great that like Elliot Gould gets involved. Come on, boys, pound it. We got a schedule to meet. You know, the music in this scene is great as well.
Mm.
Da 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 da. Yeah, and you know that they re-recorded some of the lines for British TV. And at the end of the Bailey Bridge building sequence, when you watch it on TV, Bridge Too Far, Elliot Gould says, "Roll 'em, fellas!" And then on the actual movie, what he really says is, "Roll the fuckers!" I don't know. I'm interested to see if that's in the script. Actually, we're behind here. Let's move on. Got the bullet out of his skull. Yeah, blah 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 blah. Yeah, stout. That's all a little last, right? So that's the beginning of the. You really get a sense of the passage of time with this whole sequence, and the whole assault has just ground to a complete standstill, which is what really happened. The Somme Bridge got blown up. Yeah, one of the few that below Nijmegen that wasn't captured on the first day. There's a cutback to Frost in this sequence, which is not in the film, with them all being asleep in the cellars with wounded British at the bridge. Yeah, look, in the script, roll the fuckers. So that he did. It wasn't an Elliot Gould ad lib. It's in the script. And of course, this whole sequence now, where they go Somme Bridge, 39 miles from Arnhem, we go all the way up to the edge of Nijmegen with this sequence. That silhouette of Michael Caine going over the river, that's not him. If you look closely, you can see it's a body double. There's so many great shots in this next sequence. And I went to the locations of all of them, and I stood where the cameras were. So for the Somme Bridge, no, the Grave Bridge is really long. They were very lucky that they caught that on the first day, because if that had been blown, they wouldn't have even got to Nijmegen. and there's a shot of it, a wide shot of it with the camera quite far away, and I went and stood in that exact spot and took a photograph there.
I think it's nice when you know something so well as you do, and you know, excuse me, the angles. You know the angles and the shots. You know you can you know, and you get yourself into those positions, and you think, you know, if only I was there, sort of, you know, 30 some years ago.
Ah,
You know, it's
there was one guy's website. I found it years ago, like when the internet first became a thing. There's the shot of the Grave Bridge and all the
yeah.
Americans celebrating. By the way, all the extras in these shots also all played German soldiers, and they all played. There were two big units of extras. One big unit for the first period of filming, and because there were two main blocks, and all the extras for the second unit of filming played absolutely every type of character. They all played British infantry, they all played German soldiers, they all played American 82nd crossing the river. They did everything. So if you look really closely, you might be able to find one guy that played three parts, like in Saving Private Ryan, that German guy that's also on the beach who gets shot through the head.
Yeah. There's a few of those, a few of those in Band of Brothers. Yeah.
Now, this scene where the tank arrives at the bridge, and they actually thought it was 30 Corps arriving, which was roughly around the time they were expected, a little bit later. And the tank comes across the bridge. This all happened. The sequence with the pier is incredibly well done. And the tank blowing up the various bits of houses, that's all the set that they built around the bridge. That's them blowing it up for real. And one of the buildings actually caught fire. Right after they cut, it went up in flames, and all the British extras playing the British soldiers all ran in it to put out the fire, because they none of them wanted to get what was called a KLM, a flight back to the UK on KLM. Because as soon as you'd been in too many shots or your character had been killed, even if you were background, Attenborough sent you back.
Yeah.
So if you watch the shots of the British soldiers getting killed around Arnhem Bridge, you can see that when they die, they always try and cover their face.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would have thought that the reason for them actually rushing in to try and, you know, put the flames out was probably because their wage packets were in there or something.
Well, they
Their
actually
wage slips.
that there was a story in Albertini's book, because it's in there, and he said, "Oh, we all made sure that Attenborough saw us getting in there and putting out the flames, and everybody that went in and put out the flames got carried over to the second block of filming, apparently."
Yeah. Oh,
Now, this scene
darlings.
where some of the British paras break through and they ambush and kill the tank crew outside the house that Urquhart's stuck in, again, it really happened. This street is actually in Deventer or Daventer. I've been to this street, tracked it down. The Hartenstein Hotel was a set built on a building that was in the process of being demolished. So it wasn't a complete build, that they had a basic house and then they built a framework around it to make it look like the real Hartenstein Hotel, which of course now is an amazing museum. If you ever go to Holland, you've got to go there.
To the museum?
The Hartenstein Museum in Arnhem, very, very good museum.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's got all this kit from the battle and a bit of a kind of Hollywood-esque show down in the basement. But I thought it was fun. It's good for the kids. But just loads of really great stuff. And there's history everywhere in Oosterbeek, which is where most of the British ended up fighting because they didn't get to the bridge. Yeah, so that's the bit with the tank coming over the bridge. Yeah, and Urquhart being rescued. So we're now... Yeah, this is where he becomes appraised of what a clusterfuck everything is. Something interesting that's not covered in the film here is the two officers that were under him, they were contesting who was in charge, because they were both in charge of different battalions and brigades, but there was debate over which one of them was senior because they both held the same rank. So there was a little bit of tension between them, because no one could quite decide who was in charge, and they all thought the general was dead. This scene coming up after this, which is probably one of the second most heartbreaking scene in the film, really happened. The actor is John Salthouse, very young John Salthouse. He is still a British television actor working today. His wife is also an actor, and he played one of the fathers in the Marchioness movie about the sinking of the Marchioness on the River Thames, which I did a play about that, but I was also in that film playing one of the people that rescued the people off the river. But it's never been shown on British television because they said that it wasn't good enough. Clearly, I didn't have enough lines in it, so that's why. I joke, of course. Good to see Darth Plato. In fact, do you know what I thought earlier, RM, is I should have invited Darth Plato to come on this. It would have been right up his street.
Yeah. Although
so, sorry,
he claims that World War II is not his forte.
Oh, but I mean, he likes these kinds of movies, though.
Yes.
So yeah, Plato, if you ever see I'm doing a stream and you fancy being in, don't wait for me to invite you.
Darth Plato. I can't remember which one.
But just give me a shout, man, if you ever want to come on something that I'm doing. If I've got room, I'll always have you on. Yeah, this scene is like that Dakota that goes down with the trail of smoke. A VC was awarded to a guy called Lieutenant David Lord. He took his plane over the drop zone 5 times, even while it was burning, to drop all of the supplies he had on the plane. And he knew he was going to die. And he let the rest of his crew bail out, but he stayed at the controls just so that they could get rid of the rest of the supply canisters. And the really annoying thing is all of those bloody canisters went to the bloody Germans. Yeah. I mean, some of them were rescued by the British, but most of the drop zones at this stage had all been overrun. So this is when this chap goes and runs for the canister. I think there should have been a scene with him earlier in the film. That's another thing I would have changed.
Yeah, to establish who he was.
Him and his mate just should have had a line of dialogue on a glider.
And of course, his mate, as we spoke about the other week, Swiftnick from Dick Turpin.
Oh, that is, isn't it? Swiftnick from Dick Turpin.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
God, yeah. I would never have recognized him. Well, yeah, because I think you just would have felt his loss a bit more, because we're only just meeting him now. I mean, you do feel his loss because this really happened. But I'm not sure the thing about the canister that this guy picked up, the contents of it, I don't think is correct.
I think you're absolutely right. It wasn't. This is kind of incorrect. I think it was just a way of illustrating that.
Yeah, the futility.
The futility of it.
Because you cut to the shot of him, and the canister is full of red berets, which, let's face it, these guys don't really need that at this time. So this is a really great shot with all their German props, with the German army retreating over Nijmegen Bridge. There's a continuity error later in the film where they cut to a shot of the American, the Shermans, the British Shermans going over the tanks. And one of the cuts, I'll tell you when it comes, is actually a cut of the German tank retreating. So I don't know how that ended up in the edit. Somebody missed it. It's very fleeting. I didn't notice it until I'd seen the film like 5 times. I didn't even understand that there were berries in the canister. I had to see the film 3 times before because it's so quick, that shot. But the truth of it, the truth of that story is they did recover a canister that had nothing but berets in it. That was recovered in their drop zone. Somebody didn't run out to get it. The one that he ran out to get, it didn't split open, so they never knew what was in it. But I think combining those 2 events, summing up how stupid it all was a good shout.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, it's John. It's John Salthouse, not Shorthouse. Salthouse, I believe. Anyway, that is correct. Big Daddy David Lord is buried in the British Cemetery at Oosterbeek, and he was awarded a VC. So we cut back to Kate to Host's house after this. Oh, there's a little battle scene here, completely cut from the movie, not in the movie. Look at this. fighting around the Hartenstein Hotel, German soldiers trying to get closer, people dodging mortar rounds, British troops firing, German troops firing. None of that's in the film. Probably cut for running time.
Yeah.
And that's all just before the sequence with the canister.
Yeah.
So I think it's supposed to show that he actually goes and tries to get that thing in the mists of battle. Yeah, me too, Big Daddy. I've been there 5 times.
Yeah, I think it's the flip of a coin whether these scenes were actually dropped due to the schedule overrunning, or whether they were shot and then discarded in the cutting room.
Now look, here is the scene in the script that I said exists on that weird version of the VHS. Here it is. Patrol of American 82nd looking for 9 Megan Bridge. They move round a corner in combat formation. Behind them, a German tank crosses the end of the street, turns its turret. They all scatter. There's Germans in every doorway, machine guns, and the whole squad just gets killed. Everybody in that squad's killed. I've seen that scene. It was a good scene apart from the first line of dialogue, which was terrible. And then you've got stuff happening here as well with Frost, and that's coming up, I think. So that scene in the cut that I saw came in a different place. I'm sure it came earlier. Yeah, it wasn't after the canister sequence. It was right before Ryan O'Neal said, we can't get anywhere near the bridge with Harry and all of that. This scene when the wounded start coming into Kate to Host's house, and that the paratrooper, the wounded paratrooper, steps over the kids' pristine train set.
Yeah.
And the blood drips onto the white velvety carpet. I mean, those images are really, really strong.
It's kind of difficult to imagine anybody other than Richard Attenborough doing this, apart from somebody like David Lean.
He didn't want to do it when it was first offered to him. He thought it was crazy. He thought he'd read the book and he thought it was unfilmable.
Yeah.
Because he said, Joe, you're going to have to shut down 9 Megan Bridge. And that was called, it was called something like the $50,000 hour shoot. Every hour that they shut down the bridge was costing them 50 grand or something, or 100 grand. And I think that whole sequence of 9 Megan Bridge and the river crossing was $1 million of the budget, all in. Worth every penny.
Yeah.
So this is that comedy scene now with the surrender. Now you see in the script that sequence hasn't happened yet, and the lady gets killed going for the taxi first. So that scene hasn't happened yet. So it's in a different running order. So you can see a lot of it changed in the edit, because that scene where that woman gets killed is just horrific.
Yeah, it really is. It's
taxi.
Yeah.
This is a great shot where when he comes back over to the bridge on the other side of what is Dave Enter, and I stood in that place and I took a photograph of that. The production value in that shot, there's 3 German assault guns, then there's like 70 extras walking past in the foreground of those. Then you've got another assault gun in the foreground of that. It's in so many shots, there's like 4 layers of art and production design.
Yeah.
Really well done. And interesting story about now the sequence where they're battering the houses round the bridge. There's one cut when a tank goes past and you see it takes down half the house. Well, that wasn't supposed to happen. And the drivers of the tank from the Dutch army were all smoking pot in the tank. They were completely high off their nut. And they lost control of their vehicle and they rammed into the set. But it looked okay, so they kept it in the film. But Richard Attenborough was really pissed because they had to they had to change the shooting schedule because that house wasn't supposed to be destroyed then. Now this next scene that I've got on now, running time on the YouTube of 2 hours 2 minutes, is probably the most tragic scene in the movie. and the score for this on the vinyl is called Human Roadblock, and it's the scene where the son of the Dutch resistant leader gets killed by a stray bullet.
Yeah.
And they're actually putting bodies of civilians on the roadblock to block the German advance, and he just lays down with his son and he dies. It's horrific.
It really is. It's
There's something really I don't know if beautiful is the right word, but there's something tragically beautiful about that
yeah,
scene.
there is. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you there. I mean, there is beauty in tragedy and tragedy in beauty, and
It's the fact that
yeah,
because they've already lost their mother, because I think you see them loading their mother onto the roadblock, the father and the son. So she's already dead at the beginning of the scene. Then he loses his son. That's it for him. His family's all gone. So, that's it for him.
and I think it's hard for us, and it's very, very difficult for us now to quantify exactly what these people did go through. Particularly the Dutch had an incredibly tough time.
Yeah.
Under the Nazis,
Now,
and these things did happen.
They did. Now the script has gone completely out of sequence now. There's the surrender scene, but the Kate to Host talking about asking for a ceasefire comes earlier in the script. Now we're at the bit where they're talking about let's get the boats. Except try, you can do that, can't you? And yeah, those boats were proper flimsy.
They were terrible.
And the ones that you see that are unloaded from the trucks in the movie, those are the exact same models. But what the ones that they used for the river crossing were they looked the same, but they were more robust and had proper, really powerful engines in them. But you know that they filmed the river crossing in reverse. So in actual in reality, in history, it took place west of the bridge, south to north, where there's a factory now, so you can't really stand there. But the current of the river was so strong that they had to film it on the other side of the bridge, and they had to cross from north to south for filming.
That's right. Yeah. I did know that. Yeah.
And you can pick up on that in the shots with the bridge in the background, because the buildings on the south side are in the wrong place. Yeah, and that's what they did.
Well, this is one of the shots in the film where that they're not going to necessarily, very few of them are going to make it through. So, you kind of watch this scene and you realize that they're getting into boats that are not great, and they're going to get, blown up here. And that's exactly what happens. And it's, even though before you watch it, it's still incredibly difficult to watch.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's the scene with Robert Redford, again, probably one of his most restrained performances. Someone's come up with a real nightmare. We'll find some idiot to lead it. Start getting your men ready.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't answer the question in chat. That is correct. The German tanks were Leopard Mark 1s redressed to look like look like panthers.
Yeah, they
Even
were
though they weren't really
1960. I think they were 1963 Leopards, aren't they?
Yeah, the older ones. That's right.
Yeah.
The one that you could get a model of from Dinky. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Dinky Toys made a model of it. I used to have that. And you always used it in your World War II battles, but it was from completely the wrong period.
Totally different era.
You didn't realize. Yeah. And it had a German flag on it representing the West German army of the 60s.
Yeah.
But you thought it was a German tank from World War II because it had this kind of iron cross-like emblem.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these boats took forever to get to the river crossing, which was supposed to happen at night. And because they had to conduct it in daylight. Now, in one of the accounts, I can't remember who, but somebody who witnessed the crossing said that it was probably the most heroic action of World War II. I'm hard pressed to find an individual action of a unit that was as brave as them in any of the accounts of other battles that I've read. When you're reading the Cornelius Ryan novel, which of course this film is based on, there's a great account in that of a guy who was loaded down with 30 cal ammunition. His boat got ripped apart by a mortar round. Everybody went over the side. he sunk right down to the bottom of the riverbed, which was covered in mud. He stayed calm, held his breath, just kept walking forwards, and he walked out the other side.
Amazing.
How nuts is that?
Amazing. I think, and also in the Cornelius Ryan book, it does sort of explain the chaotic nature of the crossing as well. That trying to paddle over, but the boats were literally just going in circles.
Yeah, and that,
because they were flat bottomed, weren't they?
Yeah, and I've been to that river, and that river is wide, and the current is strong, as he says. And if any more cheery information comes along, I'll find you. And the scene where he's talking to the soldiers, in the background there's an actor called Stephen, who I directed in a play. He was an extra on the second unit that went over from the UK, and they did all the 80-second. And I found him in a shot, and I paused him. And Attenborough gave him a line for the scene to say in American. And of course, he hadn't practiced an American accent because he hadn't done any. He wasn't supposed to have any dialogue.
Yeah.
And after Attenborough heard him do his terrible American, he said, "Yeah, okay, we won't use that." So his chance of having a line in the film was gone.
His chance of immortality.
Nice guy, Stephen. He had loads of great stories about the filming.
I'll bet he did. Yeah.
Yeah. Said it was a great experience. But there's this really big build up to the river crossing, people waiting for the boats to arrive, cutting to various shots. And I mean, this sort of stuff I don't mind. This is time well spent at the running time. And then Julian Cook comes down to his men and decides to do a speech to them to occupy the time, which really happened. He was doing the speech as the trucks arrived. That did happen. And then it's in the background of this briefing scene is where you'll see the guy from Cheers. There's also one of the bad guys from North Sea Hijack with Roger Moore that was made a couple of years after this, is in the background of this scene. He's also on the river crossing.
In fact, I'm surprised that we didn't see Roger Moore in this, to be honest.
He was contracted to do Bond.
Yeah.
He had very limited filming windows. And I don't think, apart from the Michael Caine role, I don't think there really was anything for him. I think the only role he could have played was Vandeleur, probably.
Or My Name's Urquhart.
I don't think Urquhart. And Urquhart was Scottish, which is why they got Sean Connery to play him. I think Roger Moore doing a Scottish accent would not have been good for the movie.
I would have loved to have seen that.
Right, so now we're coming up to the river assault sequence. Again, I'll put my hat in the ring and say this is one of the best action sequences for a movie ever filmed in any movie ever.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And the boat that Robert Redford was on was a special camera boat. And there's a book being made about the making of A Bridge Too Far. The link for it, by the way, to pre-order is in the blurb underneath. Written by Simon Cook, who did the making of Waterloo. So this is his follow-up book. I would have written this book myself. I wish I thought of it first.
Wow.
It's available for pre-order. Doesn't come out until next year.
Right.
But the shot of Richard Attenborough on that camera boat with Robert Redford in front of him is on the cover of the book. If you look at the link.
Fantastic. Yeah. And he did Making of Waterloo as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Okay.
And contributed towards the 30th anniversary Blu-ray, which I've got. He worked on the voiceover and everything. So this river assault is incredibly accurately depicted. The Germans didn't fire until the Americans got about halfway over, and then they let rip with everything they had. But the German soldiers that were entrenched on the northern embankment, because it wasn't considered a vulnerable area, were just a local unit of, what were they called? The units that were made up of young boys and old men. They had a name, didn't they?
The Volkssturm, not the Volkssturm.
Volkssturm. Yeah, they were. I don't know if the Volkssturm had happened at this point in time. I can't remember when they first came in, but it was a unit similar to that.
Yeah,
it was like wounded soldiers, and
yeah, I think it was the Volkssturm.
They may. I think they were formed in 44, but I can't remember the month.
Yeah.
But if you watch carefully, when the Americans reach the other side, you'll see two of the German actors are no more than kids. One of them looks like he's about 11 years old.
Yeah.
And that is in the accounts of one of the personal American
Yeah.
accounts, which I read. The detail of it's not in Cornelius Ryan's book. He said he bayoneted a kid who couldn't have been more than 12 years old.
Oh,
Yeah.
When they got over the other side, there was absolutely no quarter given. Some of the Germans tried to surrender. They just killed them. And I mean, you would, wouldn't you, having gone through all that?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you're not going to take surrender of the guy who's just been blasting away with a machine gun and killed 10 of your mates.
I think it's also, I'm sorry to go back to Band of Brothers, but I think it's also illustrated in the Crossroads episode when, the opening sequence of that with Winters shooting the young German boy. Very similar kind of thing.
Yeah, and actually that actor looks very similar to the second youngest one in this sequence. They look really similar if you look.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you watch this sequence, which is edited amazingly well, every time you see the close-ups of the Americans either in the water or there's explosions going off next to them, you can see that if you look, those shots are not actually done on the river. All the wide stuff was all done on the river, and some of the close-ups of some of the actors was done. Anything wide with all the boats on. But when you look at the close-ups or you see the shots of people getting machine gun and stuff, the angles are all really low. We're in that same river pond where the bridge was blown up, the Swan Bridge was blown up, that foot of the lake. Yeah, we're in that, and they had a bit of a wave machine, and so all the close-ups were done there, and the close-ups of explosions. But when you watch the Blu-ray and that first big boom goes off, and it's like the current's taking us down, steady left, shoom, shit. That always made me laugh, and we weren't used to hearing the word shit in the 70s until Smokey and the Bandit came along.
Yeah, because as we all know, Burt Reynolds invented swearing.
He did
in England, anyway.
Yeah, I thought Jennifer Lawrence invented it, but I believe Burt Reynolds did invent it. When you watch that first detonation on the Blu-ray, because everything is so scaled up, you can see the line of the charge.
Yeah.
Because it gets blown up into the sky, the cable that was connected to the detonator.
Yeah.
For the effects team. So again, I've been to these locations because you can actually get to these. Where the actual assault took place is now all owned by an electricity company. It's all very deliberately sealed off with fences and things, and they get very upset with you if you try to intervene. Not that I'd know anything about that.
I think we have a confession right there.
No, actually, I didn't try. I'd been told it was pointless, but I know lots of people did try, and the police did not take too kindly to. So this battle sequence, once the Americans get to the other side, so well edited, and then you get that shot of that baby kid. Suddenly, I had to look at that like twice. I was like, "Is that a kid? Is that a mistake?"
Yeah.
Did they need to use some kid extra? They didn't have enough extras in there, because when I watched it the second time, I realized, oh yeah, there's one shot in that river assault where you can see the rail bridge behind.
Oh right.
Because there are two bridges at Nijmegen, but they're never the rail bridge is never mentioned. And the Americans crossed west of the rail bridge. They captured the end of the rail bridge first, and that's what led to the Germans all routing, because the ones on the south side realized they couldn't get across. Now, as they assault the area around the bridge, and they go up the embankment, even though this is taking place on the north side of the bridge, when he goes up onto the embankment, you've got the railings, and the guy chucks the grenade up, and they go up the staircase. That staircase is all on the south side of Nijmegen Bridge. I went to both sides to check, and I was like, yeah, the south one works a lot better for the cameras, doesn't it, Richard? I see why you picked it. It's got steeper embankments. The staircase is a bit more prominent. It just works better.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as you would well know, certain artistic choices have to be made, but it's the execution of it in order to illustrate the story, the essence of the story. I think perfect, regardless of minor inaccuracies, and minus.
Oh, I mean, I don't have any issue with that at all.
No.
This scene where the tanks are moving closer to the bridge, you know, 30 Corps fighting their way through the town. It's amazing how much detail there is in that shot. And I've been trying to work out where that shot was done, and it was actually done on the north side. I found it yesterday on Google Earth. And if you watch, there's a British private running a load of German troops that have surrendered with hands on their heads, and he's going, "Schnell, schnell, run faster," you know, behind them. It's just like little details like that in every shot. So much of that. Once Major Cook's up on the bridge, every time there's a wide shot, you'll notice that there's loads of smoke in the background. The reason that there's loads of smoke is because there's two big blocks of modern flats, and they use the smoke to screen them out.
Very good.
You can see them in one shot, but it's so brief.
It's funny you mentioned about the hands on their heads. If there's one kind of technical inaccuracy whenever you see German prisoners of war with either their hands kind of aloft, if you like, but on their heads, that never happened, because the German soldiers, I'm sorry to be really anal about this, but German soldiers, they literally, their hands would go directly straight up into the air. That's how they surrendered. So when you see them coming out of the tunnel in the Great Escape, and they say don't shoot, and you see their hands are literally standing right up, that's how they used to surrender.
Yeah, but to defend the film, the shot with the guy running them along, they've already surrendered at that point.
Yeah.
So he probably said, "Put your hands on your head." Now, this sequence where the tanks are going across and the guy tries to blow up the bridge, one of the close-up cuts, when it cuts back to the middle of the bridge, you can see the tank with the foliage on it is one of the German tanks from the retreating scene earlier. Why they cut that into that sequence in with the Shermans, I've no idea. It's really stupid. But you know what? You never would have noticed it if it wasn't for DVD.
No.
Because I didn't spot that until about 10 years ago. Yeah, so of course, one of the most bravest acts of the war. They get across the bridge at this point in time. The British are still clinging onto the bridge in Arnhem. The Germans haven't got troops on the highway. They've got a couple of little AT guns and maybe a few platoons here and there. But between Arnhem and Nijmegen at this point in time, there's almost nothing. That delay of the British waiting for their infantry to catch up. I mean, to be fair, it's difficult to know what they could have done. They should have taken the Americans with them, stuck them on the tanks, and just rolled up the road.
Yeah.
But that delay cost the guys at the bridge, because there was a small window where they could have got there then. But within 6 hours of that, the bridge was captured and a platoon of Tiger tanks was rolled over it, and they blocked the highway just north of a town called Elst. So the British were never going to get to the bridge after that. Let's just... Yeah, so this is kind of like Frost's sort of last stand at the bridge. Now, this radio communication between Frost and Urquhart, where finally their radios were working, did happen. And they did have this conversation. Whether they said, I don't know if it's a case of you coming for us or us coming for you. I don't know whether that's what they really said. The conversation was pretty short, but it's in all the various literature. So yeah, Sunray on set. You don't hear them use the term Sunray in the film. It's always Golf Charlie Fox or... I thought Sunray was a pretty modern term for the British Army. I didn't know that they used that in World War II. I could be wrong. Radio comms, not my area of expertise. This is the sequence coming up now where, you know, you've got the tanks racing around. Frost gets injured as he's running between buildings. And I'm pretty sure he was running at that time.
Yeah.
And yeah, he got shrapnel in both his kneecaps. So he wasn't walking anywhere after that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now this scene with with Julian Cook, between him and the British officer saying, you know, why aren't you guys rolling? And you're just going to stop here and drink tea. That scene didn't happen between Robert Redford's character and this British guy. It happened between Julian Cook's number 2 and the British guy. And when the British guy refused to move his tank, the American pulled out his pistol and threatened to kill him. And the British guy ducked inside his tank and shut the hatch.
Mm.
So it was a lot less civil than the exchange here, even though the exchange here is pretty frosty. But that was a very British thing with the British Armored Corps. Whenever you stopped and that you weren't engaged, you put a brew on, get the tea on. It was a morale thing.
Yeah.
The other thing that was really important to the British soldiers as well was they always wanted to try and have a shave in the morning, because if you felt you'd had a shave, that's why you always took a shaving kit into battle. It was known to affect the soldiers' morale, because they felt fresh, they felt ready for combat. You know, silly thing, but. Oh, the script's gone a bit wonky here. Photocopier clearly. Yeah, British corporal's cooking something on the tank. So yeah, we're in Frost's cellar, and this is the scene where, with Carlisle with his umbrella. I've got a fantastic toy soldier of this guy painted up. I wish I could say I painted it, but it was painted by Kevin Dallymore, who's a superb figure painter, which was made for my Arnhem Bridge game, which I will show people on the stream when we get to the end of the movie. I'll show you some pictures of that. Yeah, and he has that great line where Frost says to him, "Why do you always carry that bloody umbrella?" I had to prove I was an Englishman. I never knew the Jerrys would carry one. So this scene with the Polish on the runway here, this scene 751, and the second with Sasabowski walking around on the runway, frustrated that the planes aren't taking off. Not in the film. That's cut. I think there were 3 people that, because there was about 880 people at the bridge, something like that, out of the 10,000 that were dropped in Arnhem. And I think when they got overrun, there's the tank taking out the house unintentionally. I think there were about 3 of them that managed to escape. One of them, I think, escaped by hiding in a coal cellar. Another one hid on a boat on the river or something, but nearly all of them were captured. But quite a few of them would subsequently escape, though.
Yeah. Again, I think you can't underestimate the role of the Dutch, the Dutch people.
No.
Putting their own lives at risk to assist the American, Polish, and British troops.
This is a great scene between Paul Copley and Anthony Hopkins, and they were friends for life as a result of doing this. He always gets invited to his birthday parties, he's telling me. And if you look in the script, the line is, we didn't get away with it this time, did we? But we gave them a good run for their money. Hopkins cut that down to, we just didn't get away with it this time, did we? And he says it really gingerly, really.
Yeah.
He doesn't give it any weight. It's really light because it's ironic, but he's defeated. He plays that. He says that line just perfectly. And then this scene where the German officer offers him the British chocolate, which the Germans have captured.
Yeah.
Is like he's trying to do it to be nice because he's the British officer that agrees to the ceasefire and all that. Yeah. But it's like the ultimate insult, isn't it? Would you like some of your supplies that we've got?
Yeah. But I think Anthony Hopkins' performance in this, for me, is by far the best.
Bella, that's incorrect. The final radio message from Osterbeek was "Out of ammo, God save the king," because Osterbeek was in radio contact with 30 Corps, and that was the final radio message from Osterbeek the day before they surrendered. I'm pretty sure that was Osterbeek, not the bridge. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was Osterbeek, which is where most of the British forces were. Banged up, as it were, and surrounded with their backs to the river. Anthony Hopkins played that scene beautifully. No dialogue. His face said it all.
Yeah.
So now we've got the scene where the Polish drop in. What's not covered in the film is all their heavy equipment landed north of the river before their drop zone was changed. And it landed right in the middle of a firefight. Nearly all of them were killed. They lost all their AT guns. They lost all their heavy machine guns. So the rest of their forces now dropped south of the river near the ferry, which is now gone. It's been sunk by the Germans. Why they didn't drop them south of the bridge, I don't know. I guess they probably thought there were concentrations of Germans there by then, which probably would have made sense. But we see them coming under fire now. And that did happen. Not quite to, I don't think it was, the Germans were quite as close as is portrayed here in the film. But nevertheless, they sustained a lot of casualties when they dropped. They were under fire from both sides of the river. But they did drop in a place where the Germans weren't expecting them, because it wasn't on the plans that got captured, because they changed the dropping zone. There's that scene with Taffy. Morphine's only for people that are really hurt. I thought I was really hurt. That's it. Again, it's in a different place in the script. So there's a lot of chopping and changing of the running order, but that's normal. So we're now in Kate Tohost's house, and this is when she became known as the Angel of Arnhem. She held the hands of so many injured soldiers that died. I mean, can you imagine how traumatic that must have been? Yet she did it again and again and again. She read out poems to them, and Liv Ullmann, who's a stupendous actress, plays
Wonderful.
it.
Yeah,
I mean, really spot on, I think.
Yeah, and and it's such an understated performance as well, I think.
Yeah, she really encapsulates
amazing.
the rack of emotion that she's going through, that she has to contain, because she can't show what she's feeling, but we can see it.
Yeah,
it's all in her eyes and in the face. See, as soon as she comes out from under the stairs, she's smiling.
Yeah,
as she moves between the soldiers. And then we've got Laurence Olivier, bless him.
Yeah,
getting in on the action. I'll be in this film. Decent paycheck, I suspect.
Yeah, he wasn't really getting that much work, was he?
Not by then, no.
No.
Marathon Man was before this, I think.
Yes, it was. And
was it 75? Marathon Man?
Yeah, I think it was 75. I think yes, 74, 75, and I think that was when he was quite poorly, wasn't he? I think because he said that Marathon Man saved his life.
Right, that's interesting. Yeah, this whole bit here. Please take my hand. This is the scene where I'm watching now. Running time on the video 2 hours 30. We're into the 3 hour movie, and with the private, I've got quite a few scenes in Dutch basements in my Arnhem episode of Paratrooper, because we end up with the family. It's all told from the point of view of the young Dutch boy, and we end up with his family at one point in their basement.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's in one of the accounts, I think it was in Cornelius Ryan's book, is one of the soldiers, and the one of the young Dutch girls, they got it on, and they shagged in the basement in the middle of all the war going on.
Yeah.
When I first read that, I was kind of like repulsed by it, but then I thought, God, yeah, these are young people that are both thinking they're probably going to be dead tomorrow.
Yeah.
And they've never had sex.
Yeah, and you know, it
But,
happened. It
yeah,
happened all over Europe. Yeah,
you understand that psychology.
yeah. I mean, you know, even in POW camps, you know, mixed POW camps, um, particularly in France, where you had, yeah, you had sort of mixed inmates, if you like, and also in concentration camps. Strangely, it's a very, very strange situation, but you know, we'll
Yeah.
never understand it. I mean, thank goodness we'll never understand
No, I
what
know.
it's like to be in those
Well, let's hope
situations.
not. I mean,
Yeah,
Putin's doing his best, but you know.
yeah,
So this is the scene with Taffy now. David Alker, great actor, still going. And then the discussion of the surrender with Laurence Olivier. This all really happened because largely suspected, because of course the Germans kind of knew defeat for them was just a matter of time.
yeah,
So I think a lot of SS officers that were in this battle, they kind of had their eye on the future, and
yeah,
the British prisoners of war were treated very well. The ceasefire was offered, it was honoured, all the wounded were removed. Yeah, there was a lot of very gentlemanly behaviour in the Battle of Arnhem that probably wouldn't have happened earlier in the war, especially not with the SS. That little scene where, I didn't comment on it earlier, but they're trying to get up the road, that raised dike. It just shows how impossible it was. All the tanks were in the clear view of the enemy. The road was at its most narrow.
yeah,
They couldn't get up it. So how they linked up with the Polish was they took a load of back roads, and the first armoured cars of 30 Corps to reach the Polish, not covered in the film, got blown up by the Polish's landmines that they'd strung across the roads to protect themselves from the Germans. So we've got some feedback on a mic somewhere. Oh, it's stopped now. Oh, no, there it is again.
I thought that was thunder, actually.
Is it windy where anybody is?
No.
Hang on, I'm going to try muting people.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's coming from RrrrMmm's mic.
Sorry.
Is there a storm outside your house?
It is windy.
Yeah, we can hear it a little bit. That's okay. Don't worry. Adds to the atmosphere of the movie.
Yeah.
So, of course, the Polish actually made 3 attempts to cross the river, not just one. They did get about 200 men on the other side. And imagine that in a couple of days, they just all had to come back again. This sequence, again, was filmed at the same location as where the Somme Bridge was blown up. It's that same kind of thumb at the end of the lake, the foot at the end of the lake. So it's not an actual river. Absolutely horrific scene. I would remember there's one shot with the guy screaming who's taken a round to the throat. Yeah. I mean, they didn't quite get massacred like this en masse, but they took casualties going over the river. Stuff like this did happen, but there wasn't like in the film. It's like they tried to get across, they all got massacred. None of them got over. That's not true. Two DUKWs, or ducks as they were known, arrived from 30 Corps as well, and they tried to take men over to reinforce Oosterbeek. One of them got stuck in the embankment, couldn't get into the river, bogged down in the mud, and the other one broke down as soon as it got into the water in the river. So that was all abandoned. But yeah, in the film, this is kind of the last, in the narrative of the film, this is like the last attempt at securing victory, and it fails miserably, which sums up the operation quite well, I think. Yeah, the music at the end of this scene, and he's looking at his dead men and remembering that he wanted a note from Browning saying that he didn't agree with his orders if his men are massacred, and his men were massacred. So this great sequence where they're driving along through the destruction of Arnhem, and there's bricks and all the rest of it. Alan Tomkins found this location. It was a factory that was partly being demolished, and they redressed all the brick and stuff to put bits of what would be houses and toilet seats and that kind of thing in it. And so if you look at one section of it, when it cuts to the right, you can see it's a factory building that's been redressed. And they've put some sides up of some houses here and there, and to show that it's like the destruction of the city of Arnhem. And Arnhem was absolutely destroyed. There was barely a building that didn't have bullet holes in it, or all the churches were completely wrecked. They were rebuilt, but so this whole sequence of negotiating the ceasefire, that all really happened. Hardy Kruger's character is not a real, he's an amalgamation of three different Haza. There's a guy called Haza, Haza and Hummel, I think. Definitely Haza.
But what an actor. I loved him.
Yeah, he passed away, I think, last year.
Yes, he did. Yeah,
he kind of disappeared into South Africa and retired on a farm.
On a farm, that's
like
correct,
he said he was going to do in the Wild Geese.
Exactly as he said in the Wild
Geese. He did exactly
Geese,
what his character said he was going to do in the Wild Geese. That's another film we've definitely got to do a watch party of, and that's another film RrrrMmm's definitely got to watch.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
What film is that?
The Wild Geese with Richard Burton, Roger Moore, Hardy Kruger,
Richard Harris.
Who am I missing? Richard Harris.
Yeah.
Dumbledore from Harry Potter. It's based on a book. There's some scenes in it that haven't aged well, but it's an amazing movie. It's the film that the what's the Stallone franchise called? The Indispensables or whatever.
The Expendables.
The Expendables. It's the film The Expendables should have been.
Oh.
As in, people in The Expendables should have got killed, so that you were on the edge of your seat thinking, oh, which one of my big favorite actors is going to get killed next? That's what The Wild Geese is.
But it's kind of based on
a book by
kind
Daniel
of based on it's really Major Mike Hall's
it's based on the
story,
mercenaries from the Congo.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Mad Mike Hall.
Yeah.
That's the guy.
Yeah.
So now we've got a series of scenes with the British surrendering, and I mean the art department really made sure every British soldier has a wound. They're caked in mud. All of the uniforms are absolutely dirty. There's a really good German account of the Battle of Market Garden called It Never Snows in September. It's a really, really good book. It's the perfect counterpoint to all the British and American books that have been written. German writer. And he interviewed lots of people that were at the battle, and all the Germans that he interviewed said it's just as well the British surrendered when they did, because we were all absolutely fucking exhausted.
Yeah.
And that they said that they probably couldn't have fought for maybe one more day. They were all, because they've been fighting as long as the British had, non-stop for like 9 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, we cut back to the Hartenstein Hotel, and it's been being shelled. And so this church that we pan up to, that is actually the main church in Deventer, right near the bridge. And then we've got the guys up in the church. Now, I don't think that scene where they've all got their binoculars and they're going, how far away are we? Half a mile? And you've got all the main characters up there. I don't think that is shot in that church, because the POV of the river that you can see behind them is not correct. So wherever that tower is, it's got to be somewhere different. But the pan up to the tower is definitely is definitely the church in Deventer, because I've been there. Tartan Walter was the guy with the umbrella at the bridge, Bella Bill, but he wasn't a radio guy, so he wouldn't have been manning the radio and sent that message anyway. It would have been the radio operator that would have said, God save the king. But I'm sure the last words of Osterbeek were God save the king. But you might be right, I might be wrong. I'm not one of these knobby guys that says, no, I make mistakes all the time. So even though this is probably my favorite niche subject of World War II.
But there's always something left for us to know about anything we think we know about.
And of course, also there's conflicting accounts of various things.
Yeah.
It's amazing as well when you look in the background and they're on this church tower. Look at all the smoke in the background, all the grey smoke, and you know what they've done there? they've set up a ring of tires because they burn really well.
Yeah.
And they create black smoke, and they've put them at intervals in the background of the shot, set them on fire before action about 10 minutes before. Get all this wonderful black smoke everywhere.
But the art direction on this is superb.
Yeah, it's first class.
Yeah.
I said to everybody when we were prepping Pegasus Bridge, the film that never happened, also known as Lance's Bridge Too Far, I got all the people that were cast and all the people that were the HODs of the crew. A whole load of them came around my house and watched Bridge Too Far in prep, and I said every scene's got to look as good as this. And I want this depth of field to detail. I want something in the foreground. I want something in the midground. I want something in the background. If we got a Jeep, we can have a Jeep in a scene. Let's have it drive past in the background. You know, I wanted to have that Cameron, James Cameron, no waste filmmaker attitude. Everything I can cram in every shot, I will. For production,
and it's
if it's historically correct.
Yeah, and it's all about your own personal composition, isn't it? It's like how you you compose in your own frame. So every shot is a tableau.
Yeah. Now this next sequence with the rain and everything, when they're doing the evacuation, this evacuation was codenamed Operation Berlin, just in case the Germans were listening in on the radio, they wouldn't think it was an evacuation. Carried out by the engineers of 30 Corps. Some men did swim across the river. There were 2 men that swam across together, and the current was so strong it ripped all of their clothes off. And as they got on the other side, there were 2 Dutch women waiting for them to give them apples. And I think he said, I took the apple, but I used it to cover my privates.
Obviously shrunk in the water. That's if all it took was an apple to cover himself.
I don't know. Dutch apples are pretty big, man. You know, cooking apples are pretty big. The people that supervised this retreat and they see the white tape, that's the glider pilots, unlike the American glider pilots who kind of sat and read a book once they landed the plane. They weren't fighting soldiers. The British glider pilots were trained up to fight as a unit. Because you put them all together and that's 200-300 guys. So they supervised the evacuation. They led the troops down to the river because the Germans were constantly trying to cut the British off from the river. So the yard between the distance between the 2 German lines for this route that they took to evacuate was about 300 yards. It was really narrow in places.
Wow.
And all of this stuff with them stopping and German patrols being right within sight of them all happened, but there was this massive rainstorm, and the rain was really loud, and it covered their noise, and they evacuated, I think, about 2,500 or around 2,000.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that was amazing. I love the attention to detail in this. You can see some of the men that are wounded are blind, and they've got their hand on a shoulder of another guy who's leading them. They're going to take out as many people as they can. All the medical orderlies all stayed behind, and
that actually reminds me of that singer sergeant picture in the Imperial War Museum, Gassed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it really is reminiscent of that John Singer Sargent.
I mean, this evacuation really was I guess you could say, was the last Allied victory of the operation. In the sense that it was amazing that they were even able to do it because they were under constant artillery fire. The Germans were about to overrun the Oosterbeek perimeter. They captured it the next day because basically everybody there just surrendered. I think there was about something like 300-400 left behind. So this final scene, when you see General Browning's HQ, Holland, if you look at that building with that dome top, that's the same dome top building that we saw through the trees earlier when Major Fuller's being told in England he's not going on the operation. So talk about getting maximum use out of one location. Just clever framing. And
really clever.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, a lot of this down to Alan Tomkins, and he was a clever bugger. He was a clever man.
I loved Alan. I mean, when I
Yeah.
first met Alan, which was when I was prepping Pegasus Bridge, somebody just said, "You need to speak to Alan Tomkins. He wants to speak to you. He's heard about the film." And he was like, "Yeah, look, I'm too old to do the movie. I'd really love to do it, but I'm too old, mate. I'm knackered by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But whatever I can do to help you get Pegasus Bridge made, I'm going to do it." That's a pretty good impression of Alan Tomkins. He had this very sort of lovely kind of positive, can do anything.
Yeah.
So this final scene between Urquhart and Browning. Yeah, Browning did refuse to change. He wouldn't change out of his uniform. He didn't change out of his uniform for about 5 days. And it was caked in blood and dirt and everything. And he refused. He just wouldn't change out of it. And yeah, I mean, you can imagine the level of PTSD on a guy like that. You've taken 10,000 men under your command, and he says it, doesn't he? He says, "I took 10,000 men into Arnhem. I come out with less than 2." Because that's in rebuttal to Montgomery says that Market Garden was 90% successful.
Yeah.
What a load of crap. Without Arnhem Bridge, the operation was nothing.
Yeah.
So this thing about Browning saying, as you always know, I always thought that we went a bridge too far.
Yeah.
I think Urquhart said in an interview, the real Urquhart said that Browning did not say that in that meeting. He said it earlier when they were being briefed in England during the discussion. What do you think? And he said, "Well, we might be going a bridge too far on this one. I don't know." It was much more of a throwaway comment.
Amazing how that now has kind of stuck in global vocabulary now.
Yeah.
Meaning anything that our our aspirations being beyond our reach.
Yeah, very much so. I use it
But,
frequently.
Yeah.
Paul Copley being brought by David Alker back to sort of the main kind of station with all the wounded. This is, now they're all ready to surrender. There's this beautiful scene where they all kind of start singing "Come Abide With Me," but in this very sort of half-hearted. Okay, thanks for checking in, Darth Plate. I really appreciate you being here. Yeah, it's all kind of no one's quite got the energy to sing it properly. So it's not exactly the scene from Zulu Dawn,
Yeah.
They're all just knackered. They're defeated, but they can still. They're still a unit. So when they start singing, it sort of slowly bleeds into unison. It's kind of a really beautiful moment. Then you pan down to that guy who was playing the flute earlier, and you can see that he's taken a massive wound to his hand, so he can no longer play the flute. I wonder if that's in the script. Let's have a look, see if that's there. Oh, if that was just something. Oh, hang on, my script's run out. Oh, my script ends where the film does not. Oh yeah, well this is the end, but the shot's different. So the end of the original movie script is this scene with all the wounded, and cuts to Major Steele, who was manning the radio, the guy who was talking about the radios, and Taffy, and 100 or so sit there, nothing, and that's the end of the movie. They don't have the scene with the Dutch family in the script. That must have been added later.
Yeah.
So that is the end of the original script. Interesting to see how these.
It really is. That really is. Really interesting to see that in comparison to what we've just sat through. But that it's funny the way you when you were describing that, when you were sort of commenting on that scene where they're all singing "Abide With Me." For me, it was very reminiscent of the final scene of "Oh, What a Lovely War," which I think is for me is probably one of the greatest shots ever put down on
film.
my
God, yeah, with all the crosses. Is that one?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Oh God.
And I can't. I actually find it quite difficult to even think about that particular scene without wanting to
Yeah,
weep.
it's
It's an incredibly moving scene.
yeah.
You know, but
Just to comment quickly. Sorry to interrupt. This final
sorry.
shot with Kate DeHoss leaving her now massively demolished
Yeah,
house. If you
yeah.
look behind, you can see the church that Lonsdale did his speech in. You can see it's a set because they destroyed it. That's the only shot in the movie where you actually see that the church has been battered. And that church is very close to the river, and that was within the British perimeter until they surrendered. And then we cut to this great shot of them walking along the dike with the sun setting. And the last thing we see is the boy, and he's impersonating a soldier marching.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they do this weird thing where the frame kind of freezes and it goes slightly it freezes and then it kind of blinks.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is quite eerie. Yeah, it freezes on the boy just before he goes out of frame. That's right. Always remember that. And then they bring in the music at the end of the film really slowly. There's like no music initially as the titles start going up. Sorry to interrupt there. I just wanted to cover that last bit of the movie. Do carry on with what you're saying.
Yeah, I think this is you know, this is where we can see that you know, this is actually a Richard Attenborough film. You know, it has the same kind of sensitivity and sensibilities in it as does Oh, What a Lovely War, which I think is also one of his finest films.
Yeah,
I think it's an incredible piece of work. This is an incredible piece of work. I mean, you look at his all of the films that he's directed. I genuinely cannot think of one that I don't like.
Yeah, I mean, I hated watching Gandhi at school because school forced us to watch it. But when I watched it at my own leisure later, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Cry Freedom is an amazing movie.
yeah.
I still think this got panned by the critics when it came out, and I still think it's one of his best films and one of the best films ever made.
Oh, the critics didn't care for this film?
No, because it was the Vietnam War was raging. War films were not in.
Yeah, kind
They
of.
didn't like it,
that
and
fashion,
I find it incredible that like Saving Private Ryan got all the praise because it was war at its most brutal. And yeah, okay, it was a microcosm. It focused on one platoon. Bridge Too Far did that way before Saving Private Ryan. This Bridge Too Far shows the war as brutal. This is the reality of war. This is war sucks. It's not a John Wayne movie, you know. On the screen now, by the way, is my personal model of Arnhem Bridge.
Ooh.
So this was at Salute in 2006, where I went all out to win Best in Show. Yeah, sorry, the Vietnam War was done by 77, but Sterling, it was very fresh in people's minds, and war movies were not doing box office. So that there was still a very big anti-war movement. You know, it was not a trend that people were embracing, even though it was an anti-war film. But I just think people didn't want to go to the cinemas to see people getting their guts blown out. And yeah, that is my Arnhem game. I know RM's got to leave soon, so I'm going to race through some other images quickly.
Oh, you don't have to race through. I mean, maybe you guys want to continue talking, but I did just want to thank you, Lance, for inviting me to this wonderful watch party. And Inside Man, it was a pleasure meeting you as well. And this has
Thank you, and you. And you.
A great time with both of you and everybody in the chat. Just such a remarkable film. And Lance, it was great to hear your comments on the script and everything. It's been just absolutely wonderful.
Well, before you go, let me show you my figure of John Frost that I had especially painted by Kevin Dallimore for the game that you've just seen the image of, because we created a poster for the game, and this is the figure.
Wow!
Nice.
How good does that look?
That's amazing.
And I've got I've got a figure of Tartan Walter carrying his umbrella as well, which I'm going to try and find a photo of. But I mean, we're going to wrap it up pretty soon. But RM, if you've got to go,
I do. And gentlemen, thank you again. This has been just such a great time. And Lance, I look forward to the next one. Count me in. Thank you.
Yeah, we're definitely going to do The Longest Day, and I know you said you wanted to be in on that. And that's another long movie, so maybe we'll start it a bit earlier.
It sounds wonderful, and thanks so much for everything.
No,
thank you very much. Thank you.
And, thank you. You're a legend.
Thank you. Take care.
All
Bye.
right. Take care.
Take
See you
care.
soon.
Bye-bye.
So RM's channel is PositiveFandom, guys. You want to check that out. She does some really interesting work. I'm just going to show you a few more shots of my game because it's only been at a show once, so most people have never seen it. I painted these Germans, not a particularly good job. You can see that the British Paras are occupying the house on the other side. That's actually Frost's house, the one with the red brick wall around it. There's actually a trench just in front of it there. You can see there. And I tried to take a lot of photographs of the game at kind of ground level. But it was always my dream to do an Arnhem Bridge game with what we called big soldiers. That me and Inside Man would know them as back in the day. And it was a lot of fun creating that game. It was expensive though.
Oh, my goodness,
I
can imagine.
I spent about 1,500. The bridge was a garden railway bridge that this company, they specialize in making them. And I got them to build me one to a specific size, and I got them to add the Arnhem sort of V things of the bridge architecture, so it looked like the Arnhem Bridge. And I mean, it came out really well. It was perhaps 2 inches too narrow, but I made it work. This is another shot from a different perspective. You can see the tiger on the left there. Advancing with another German. Now, those soldiers on the right, they are from a toy company called Britons, and they are the
I know them.
That's the set of the Britain German infantry. Most of them are, and they've been repainted with SS camo. Nice. And some of them have had conversions made and things of that nature. I've got a lot of toy soldiers. It's always a great first date chat up line with any lady. What are your hobbies? Well, I like playing with toy soldiers. Fancy a game?
Want to play?
This was I know, right? So the show, we had a big banner which I actually forgot to take. I forgot it was on the wall near the table for the game. There's me with my then flatmate who helped out on the day. And that was at Salute Games Convention. It takes place in April. Thank you, Sterling, for being on the stream. Yeah, man, if you ever see me at Salute, just come up and say hi. Please do. Absolutely. I just want to show you guys a couple of other things. So I've got photographs of when I went to Arnhem. And I've also got some interesting photos of other people's Arnhem games. So let's have a quick look at some of those. Because, I mean, you'll be amazed, Inside Man, at some of these. So this is the folder. I'm going to go through them. So that's the perimeter at Oosterbeek. British defending. This is an overview of a whole massive game. This was for sale on not on eBay. Hold on, let me let me get the image up. Let me select it individually so it's bigger. There we go. Right. So if you see that, you can see it's the bridge. Plus, you've got the river road. You've got the factory works where the Germans that didn't get across the bridge set themselves up in that factory. Machine gunned all the British on the second and third day at the river trying to get to the bridge. You've got the church and everything there. And they were selling these boards with some of the buildings, not all of the buildings, and the bridge. I think it was for about 1,500 quid. And I so wanted to buy it. But you know where it was? It was in Australia.
Oh, no.
You can see the Hartenstein Hotel there, but that's the perfect gaming board
That's lovely, yeah.
for Market Garden, and that scale would be 20mm. Beautiful board.
Yeah, lovely.
So I've got a couple of others. Let me show you. Because so many people have gamed this. So I did a massive Market Garden game with a guy. One of the guys was called Colin Rumford, who also has designed wargaming rules called Rapid Fire, which most people will have heard of. Oh, here's a good shot of it. Let me show you this photo. So it's always been my dream to have like a wargames room in my house, if I had my own house, which I don't. And I'd have like this amazing Arnhem setup. So look at this. This is a setup for Arnhem on the big game I did.
Oh, lovely.
So there was one section of the room that was Arnhem, which was this. You can see that's Osterbeek downstage, so to speak. Arnhem Bridge in the distance. They had another section which was Nijmegen. That looked amazing. I don't think I've got a photo of that, Dan. And then they had another long section of the road from Eindhoven. There was about 30 players.
Wow.
Yeah, about 30
Yeah,
players.
that's amazing.
And yeah, that 132nd. My setup 132nd. This is 20mm. A lot of people play 28mm now, but the scale popular before that was 20mm. So yeah, it is an incredible setup. I think that's all the wargaming pics of note. Let me see if there's another one. I think there's one other setup that somebody did that's not quite as good, but it's still a good effort. I don't think I've got an overview picture of it though, sadly. No, okay. All right. Well, let's move on from wargaming pictures. So I just want to show you some pictures from my visit. If they're Belgium Market Garden, yeah, here we go. So I'm only going to show a couple before we wrap this up. But I always say to people, what would you rate this film out of 10 on IMDb? Overall, I have to say I give it a 10. If I was being really mean, I'd probably say 9.5, because I think there are some scenes that actually, now we've looked at the script, I think the massacre of that American platoon, that scene definitely should have been in the film to over illustrate that the Americans couldn't penetrate Nijmegen. We hear it being talked about, we don't really see it. We didn't need all the supply and logistics stuff. It's good that they cut all of that. That's a low. I mean, it's important, but it's, in the grand scheme of things, it's not crucial screen time.
But I'd have to agree with you. I mean, for me, it would. I couldn't really bring myself to mark it any lower than a 10. I couldn't.
Yeah.
I do love it. I love this film.
I'm nitpicking to put it to 9.5. There are some things about it that I would like to see handled better.
Yeah.
But now that's me at what's now called John Frost Bridge.
Right.
Yeah, that was taken, I think, in 2010. And you can actually see the twin spires of the Wahlberg, I think it's called Wahlberg or Walderberg Church.
Yeah.
In the background there. Behind you see all the modern buildings there, because of course they were all destroyed. Now it just so happens that Deventer has exactly that same church and exactly the same design of bridge. So they were very lucky in terms of finding that location. I think I've got a great photo of me on Nijmegen Bridge, because when we were doing the tour, I did a tour with a load of gamers.
Yeah.
And they were about to take, we'd done sort of one end of Nijmegen, and they were about to drive over it. And I said, drive over it. I'm walking over it. You're joking, aren't you?
Yeah.
I've come all this way. I want to walk over it. So I
absolutely
walked
right.
over it. And I've got a picture of that. I've also got a picture of the group with Arnhem Bridge in the background. So I was with a group of war games designers, headed up by Mark Simonich, who's a great historian. He knows just about almost as much about the battle as me. And he loves seeing the terrain, because of course he makes the maps for his games.
Yeah.
based on his visits to the areas when he's designing his war games. So that's Nijmegen Bridge when I walked across it. Very much as it was.
Yeah, that's quite something.
It's huge as well. It's
That's
huge.
quite something.
It's really huge. It's much bigger than Arnhem Bridge. Arnhem Bridge is tiny.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty special. That.
Yeah. And then this was our group at Arnhem Bridge. That's Mark Simonich's son on the left with the beard.
Mm.
And as you can see, there's a group of war gamers in deep discussion there about, oh, yes, that happened over there and so on.
Mm-hmm.
There are some memorials and things around the bridge, and the bridge is certainly worth visiting. But actually, the funny thing is, if you go to Daventer Bridge, you get a much better sense of what Arnhem would have looked like because it's still largely untouched by the war. It wasn't fought over.
Mm.
So all the original buildings around the bridge at Deventer are all still there. There are a couple of modern ones,
great.
but not many. And when we were on the tour, I was badgering them. I said, can we go to Daventer? I really want to see the bridge from the movie. No, that's not on the tour. Okay. But so the next time I went to Holland, that was the first place I went. I just have a couple of others that might be worth looking at. I mean, we did the museum, and we went to all the drop zones, key places where battles were fought. The drop zones are all marked with things like this. So you go to one of the drop zones in the British sector, you're in the right field when you see that.
Yeah.
It's very unsubtle.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I think, listen, it's late. Let's bring this to a close.
Okay.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Those
of you that have been watching the whole time or even joined us late, thanks for joining the stream. Appreciate you giving up your time. I'm very, very passionate about this film. Very passionate about my two projects, Pegasus Bridge and Paratrooper. Now, there's something happening with one of those projects. I don't want to say what or who. I don't want to curse anything. But there's serious interest from a powerful individual within the film industry who could maybe tip the balance with one of the projects getting greenlit. But I've been here so many times. So, there's no point I'm not even feeling in any way. So it's nice that it's happening. It's nice the interest is there. The interest is definitely genuine. But actually, I'm going to show this last photo quickly. But again, there's been genuine interest before. There's been non-genuine interest before. This is a much better picture of Nijmegen Bridge to give you the idea of the scale and the size of it. In the other photograph, it looks a lot lower.
Yeah, that looks
because of the angle. But it's huge. It's big.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty spectacular.
It's a beast. But yeah, so but in the meantime, the Pegasus Bridge screenplay is available on Amazon. You can buy it in hardback or softback. The first two episodes of Paratrooper, episodes 7 and 8, are available. Why 7 and 8, Lance? Why aren't we reading them in order? Because 7 and 8 are self-contained episodes. They're also two of the best episodes. They're the Crete and the Arnhem episode. And they're two of the best scripts I've ever written. So I just decided I wanted to publish them first because the pilot, the Paratrooper pilot, which is coming out in a couple of weeks, also covers Pegasus Bridge. And I'd only just released the Pegasus Bridge script. So I didn't want to do two things on the same topic, So, yeah. Oh, this is quite a good picture. Well, it is and it isn't. It isn't because I'm in it. But yeah, here you go. So that's me down by the bottom of the bridge. Oh, hang on. There we go. With me out of focus, but the bridge in focus. Looking very serious. And what am I wearing on my head, Inside Man?
Would that be a pirate's hat, or would that be a clown's hat?
Do you not recognise the logo on the cap?
Let's have a look, mate. Sorry, my screen has been black for about 5 minutes.
Oh, it's oh, you should have said it's you're pretending to be really engaged in everything I'm showing.
No. It's come back.
Do you recognise it?
It's gone again.
Oh,
Sorry, mate. I don't know what's going on with my
it's probably your
screen.
battery. Well, we're about to wrap up anyway. It's a Pinewood Film Studios hat.
Where are we? Hang on a minute.
So,
oh, you're back again.
Yeah.
Oh, is that the old one?
That's the old Pinewood Studios baseball cap. Can't get them anymore.
That's the one that's got Shepperton, Teddington, and Pinewood on the back, is it? Yeah.
When they all kind of united.
Yeah.
Under one banner. When
Pinewood
you've
just disappeared again.
Anyway, well, look, don't worry. We're going to wrap it up there. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Do like and subscribe to the channel. Lots more stuff like this coming. Lots more industry interviews coming. When are we doing the Judge Dredd comparison? Is that this Wednesday?
Tuesday, I think it was. Was it
Tuesday?
22nd?
Well,
Was it 22nd?
I've got 2 streams this week. I think I've got top 5 horror films and I've got the Judge Dredd thing.
Yeah.
Tuesday. I've got one Tuesday, one Wednesday. Anyway, Inside Man's got an actual prop from the set of the Carl Urban Dredd movie. And we're going to give it away to somebody in the chat on our Judge Dredd stream.
Yes.
So check that out. To take part, all you need to do is be on the stream, watch the stream, and actively take part in the chat. Leave comments and all of that.
Invite your friends.
Invite your friends, indeed. Form a conglomerate, and you might increase the chances of you winning this official prop. We've got a photograph of it on the set. So let me Judge Dredd is on the Tuesday. So Dredd and Judge Dredd comparison and retrospective review. So that's Judge Dredd Tuesday. That's quite a late start. It's at 11:30. I might bring that down to 11, but it certainly won't be earlier than that because we're leaning towards our American audience. And then on Wednesday, we are doing top five horror films from 1970 to 1990.
Can you just clarify what would and wouldn't qualify for those? Would sci-fi horror be in there?
Sci-fi horror can qualify if it's set within the current timeline or past timeline of history. So The Thing would qualify, Alien would not.
Right. Okay.
If it's set in the future, I mean, even though Alien technically was a horror film, if it's set in the future, we're because we get into muddy waters then.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So we're keeping it as in it's got to be set in the present or past of known Earth history.
Yeah.
So The Thing is allowed.
Okay. And are we're also talking supernatural slasher?
Yeah. Anything that was classified as a horror film within that timeline.
Yeah. Okay.
Including supernatural horror. I will also accept the feature film version of Salem's Lot, even though the full-length version was only shown on TV and the edited feature-length film version was horrible.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
but it's still a great show. So you can vote for that, saying, "But this is really for the TV thing." It's certainly on my short. I've got 20 films on my shortlist. I know my number one. I don't know my other 4.
Yeah, me too, mate.
My number one was staring me in the face for ages, and I was going, "What's my number one? What's my number one?" And I got it, and I was like, "Oh, of course it's that." But my next 4 movies, that I don't know. Right, okay. Listen, I'm gonna duck out straight away, mate. So,
okay, mate.
I had an absolutely knackering time. Let's try and address this question from RrrrTNZ at the end. Classic film, cultural trait of us British people to celebrate heroic failures as much or even more than victories. Well, I would argue that A Bridge Too Far isn't celebrating the failure of Market Garden.
No, I think it's highlighting rather than celebrating.
I would say that it's a film that highlights the tragedy of the operation and sheds the light on the reasons that it failed. Certainly shines a light on acts of heroism that took place, but I wouldn't say it's a film that's celebrating them. I don't think that tone is in the film.
Yeah, I mean, you can actually really, I suppose, sit down and say, this is actually an analytical film, an analytical story. It's analyzing, where everything went wrong from start to finish.
Yeah,
So
in a dramatic.
it's kind of pointing out all these different stages of this awful situation that happened.
Is there a
And
film that would meet that statement? That's a true story drama or something that's celebrating a heroic failure. Yeah, okay. I would say the one that meets that description would be The Great Escape.
yeah, perfect.
Because the breakout of
Perfect.
that was basically predominantly, I mean, like 3 people got away.
Yeah.
So it was predominantly a heroic failure. About 30 or 40 of them were rounded up by the SS and shot.
Yep.
And the rest of them were returned to prison camps.
So
that's
a perfect example. Yeah.
Yeah,
perfect example.
Yeah. And you can see how tonally that film is completely different from Bridge Too Far. And of course, Hannibal Brooks, the true story of Oliver Reed taking an elephant across the Alps and escaping from Germans, as we know, very factually accurate, also is celebrating the that's not a heroic failure, it's a heroic success. I do love that film.
Yeah,
we've got to do a stream on that. Right, okay.
It's a bit of a charmer. Yeah.
Inside Man, I've got to go.
Okay, mate.
Thanks so much for watching, people that you've watched. If you came via Paratrooper or Pegasus Bridge, I really appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, bless you all.
I know the fact that neither of those projects have come to fruition yet is a source of frustration for many, and I'm sure many people have written them off as never going to happen, and we shall see. But I'm still beavering away in the background, so you never know. Right, thanks everybody, and we'll be back on Tuesday at 11 or 11:30 UK time, give or take. Inside Man, I'll confirm that with you ASAP.
Yep. Okay, mate. Okay,
Until then, we'll look after yourself, guys, and don't forget to tell the people that you care about that you love them.
Yeah.